The committee will come to order. I'd like to, before I begin my opening statement, I would like to yield for a brief moment to the chairman of the full committee. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for yielding. And I just want to set the stage for a second before we get started this morning. We have a witness at our table today that has received a death threat that I listened to the voicemail. Someone said he was a left-wing anarchist, and you're here. People, if they want to listen to it on the committee, they're welcome to. Left-wing anarchist, and you're testifying before Nazis today, and so and received a death threat for that. We have our finest on Capitol Hill here with us today, our police officers in the room. It's not typical. We're going to make sure this is a safe hearing room. We're going to make sure we have a very important discussion in front of us today. I talked to a mother yesterday, someone's going to share, that lost her son 2 weeks ago to suicide because of what was going on to him online. This is a very serious topic. Most of the bills before us are bipartisan, and I think all of them are actually, and it's an issue we all want to address, but we need to make sure we do it in the right tone. And I know my good friend who's the chairman is going to make sure this committee does it in the right tone today, and I appreciate our officers being here. And I apologize for the witnesses for what you had to go through, because you're here to testify for protecting our children. I know there's been other things as well, and we just want to apologize for what you've had to go to. We know you do, and I've been to the Center for Missing Children, and what you deal with every day and what you have to deal with is just, it's disturbing. But I walked away going, boy, I couldn't do that every day, but I'm so happy there are people that are, because you're there protecting our children and what you see and do every day and what you have to see what our children go through. And it's just sad. But I want to just set the tone. We're going to have a safe hearing room, and we're going to have a good hearing today. And we're going to focus on the subject at hand. So I will yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's subcommittee hearing to examine risks to Americans' safety online. Today's hearing is an incredible, it really is extremely important, folks, and I'm thankful we are hitting the ground early this Congress to protect ourselves from, and our children more importantly, from dangers in the online world. Technology has created a wonderful tool to gather information and connect us to the world. But with every new great tool, malicious actors have found a way to refigure technology to spread malice and harm people across the globe. While Congress has looked to build walls preventing these harms from occurring, we have failed to keep pace with technology. Take, for example, the important work Congress did to combat sexual exploitation of children. When Congress first worked on this issue, it was hard to imagine artificial intelligence could be used to create fake but lifelike, non-consensual, intimate images of children. Worse still, it was hard to imagine anyone so vile who would actually do it. But today, this detestable people are extorting children with technology, creating these images and uploading them online for the world to see. And it doesn't stop with deep fakes either. Criminals are masking themselves as friends or romantic partners to solicit intimate, authentic images of children and ransoming these images for a quick buck. Detestable, as I said. The pain these children experience is hard, and it breaks my heart, and I know it breaks your hearts too. We've got to do something about it. Yiota, thank you for your work at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and for providing your expertise. We appreciate you so very much. Thanks for being here. Again, you're doing God's work. I'm looking forward to your testimony and why Congress must act immediately to stop this abhorrent practice. Congress must take a holistic approach to establish protections online, that's why I'm so proud to see many of our members working on different mechanisms to protect our children. I, for one, am eager to move the ball forward on the Kids Online Safety Act, and I know Representative Castor is as well. While this is not a legislative hearing, I'm hoping we can use this hearing to improve the legislation and enact a law that provides parents with the tools they need while also targeting illegal content from ever making its way to children's screens in the first place. Parents know their children the best, so we must adequately equip them with the tools they need to protect their families. Unfortunately, it is clear the existing tools do not work. I'm tired of hearing big tech insist that solutions are already in place when it is clear they are not working. And it's true, they're not working. No more excuses, folks. We have to fix this. We have to hold big tech accountable. The very companies that have positioned themselves as the gatekeepers of our children's online safety continue to let us down, as I said. Don and Claire, thank you for being here to share your experiences and your commitment to driving real change. This hearing should not be partisan. It is far too important of any issue to use a political, this is not a political circus, folks. We've got to save our kids. Whatever it takes, we must save our children. Many of us here today have introduced or are working on legislation to build protections from harms online. This is not a partisan issue, as I said before, and it impacts every one of our districts. And I know there are members here that will share stories, and I have one here. In 2022, McKenna Brown, a 16-year-old from the Tampa Bay area, tragically took her life after being victimized by cyberbullying through multiple social media apps and text messages. McKenna's parents knew none of this until it was too late. Since then, her mother, Cheryl, has been an advocate for change, urging lawmakers to give parents the tools necessary to keep the kids safe. I understand there are similarly situated parents here in the audience. Thank you so very much for coming. And I want to recognize your own stories, efforts, and commitment to protect children from online safety. So I do have other comments, but I don't want to run over. We are going to stick to the time. And I'm going to recognize now the ranking member from the great state of Illinois for her 5 minutes. Thank you. You're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we had in place what we needed to protect our children. And that's why I am absolutely furious right now that there has been this effort to fire the two members of the two members of the FTC who were doing a wonderful job, bipartisan, making sure that we are, and I'll go into more detail, protecting our children, which you seem so important. It is very important. But come on, we are now seeing the effort to fire these really important workers. You know, it makes me absolutely so angry that the President of the United States thinks it is his ability and his right to fire these people when, in fact, that is not true. It's against the law. These individuals, we have two here today, that have done such great work, their term has not been over right now. So this was a decision, instead of justifying what is the rule according to the Supreme Court, these individuals should still be on the FTC commission. So I don't really understand why we would want to substitute others. I understand that the Republicans are still in place, and yet the Democrats, who worked so well, are now considered fired, but they really cannot be legally done. So I wanted to, what is this?
Gus, we've worked on tickets and privacy. You wanted to say to Gus that you've worked in tickets and privacy together?
Yeah. So Gus, I wanted to say to you, we have worked on so many issues together, on privacy, some things on children. I agree with you on the urgency of doing these things. We have the people in place who can help to do it. But now we don't have that bipartisan effort, and it makes no sense, and it should be overturned, and then continue to make sure that we are protecting our children. What we are seeing right now, too, is that it's not only protecting our kids, but it is also, food prices. And that's certainly something that the president said, the food prices have to go down. Instead, they have gone up, and the food prices, the gouging that was taking place is actually something, once again, that the full complement of the Federal Trade Commission was looking at and doing something about. Also, okay, what's next?
Gift to billionaires.
So this is just one big gift to the billionaires, that were the ones that were at the front page at the when the president was sworn in. Those were the people he had there. And what we need is something, the advocates for the individuals. And I just want to say to the commissioners, Bedoya, and our witness right here, what's it?
Slaughter. Commissioner Slaughter.
Commissioner Slaughter, who is here to talk about the work that they did. Behind her is her partner. So it seems to me that we had in place something that worked for consumers, that helped our children, made sure that there were funds for the health care that they needed, and now that now the guarantee is gone. And so I just want to say that I'm very disappointed. We didn't hear a word from the Republicans about getting rid of the commissioners. Didn't hear anything from you, Gus. And well, you know, how many minutes did you take?
No, I took about 38 seconds over.
No, that's
And I'm
not
giving-
true.
I'm giving you over a
It
minute.
was 1 minute and 9 seconds over, yeah. Just,
Okay, I yield back.
Okay, I'm going to recognize now the the chairman of the full committee for his 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks,
I
Mr.
recognize
Chair. Thanks for the recognition, and really appreciate the witnesses being here today and all the family members here today. You know, I wish I could say that we had in place everything we needed to keep our children safe online, and we weren't having this hearing today. And this hearing is about children. It's not about what's going on here in Washington, D.C., and it's about children. It's about the families in this audience who've lost children. It's about a phone call I had yesterday with the mother of Eli Heacock, who took his own life about 2 weeks ago because of something that was going on online. He was being scammed. He was, I didn't even know the term sextortation until I started talking with her. I knew what was going on, but I didn't know that term. And he was a twin brother. And because he was a preemie, he had a feeding tube. 16 years old, had a feeding tube. And his mother said to me that, well, at least he doesn't have to deal with this feeding tube anymore, when the medical examiner took it out. And so he was a kid that everybody loved, that she said, I couldn't believe people from 5 counties showed up to be at his funeral. I didn't know he touched that many lives. I mean, these are who we're here to talk about. This is what this hearing's about. And I will say to my friend, the ranking member, that we want this to be bipartisan. We want these bills to get a bipartisan vote. And if everything was in place and to be in place, we wouldn't be talking about COSA and children's online safety, which we're going to have a bill this year, or it's going to pass as soon as we can get everything we need together to do. We're going to do Take It Down Act, where that's why we're having this hearing today, to get this moving quickly. There was a bipartisan group of House members and senators who met with the First Lady, and we all saw the lady who was here during the State of the Union that was 15 years old and had fake nudes of her. Somebody took a picture of her, took her face and put it on a body, an unclothed body, and sent it out to her entire school. Could you imagine being a 14-year-old girl? It wasn't her body, but could you imagine being a 14-year-old girl and know that everybody in her school thinks that they saw her without her clothes on? How horrifying that is. There was a young lady from New Jersey, the same thing happened to her. Those are just a couple of cases. Those are a couple of cases, and they happen to people all the time. And so we're here for a very serious issue. And I really hope that I'll take my good friend, the ranking member, up on her request that we make this bipartisan, because it absolutely has to be bipartisan, because it touches everybody in everybody's district. And I know some of us on this have the phone calls like I had yesterday. And if it doesn't, I mean, I know it moves everybody. I know it moves everybody here. So what I want to say is that the Take It Down Act, which, and COSA and all these other bills that protect our children for online safety are going to be a focus of this subcommittee, focus on this committee, and we'll get them across the House floor. I know Take It Down Act has already passed the Senate, so if we move this we have this hearing, move it and mark up and move it out of committee and goes to the floor, it goes right to the president for signature and becomes law. And as I said, I wish everything was in place, and we weren't here today, but we're here today because not everything is in place. And we have the witnesses that are here that are in the front lines. And I said, I've been to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and it is actually phenomenal what you do and what you, I remember walking out there going, I can't believe you see what you see every day. But you do it because you want to protect children. That's why you're there, and you have to see it because people are doing it. If people weren't doing it, you wouldn't see it. And so we have to have laws in place. That was the first bill that I ever had signed by a president. President Obama signed a reauthorization of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children when I was on Ed and Labor when I first got here. So I just want to hopefully use my time to say, I know we've all been touched by cases in our district. We all care. We all want it to be better. We wish we could 100% fix it, but we know it absolutely has to be better. And the predators always try to stay one step ahead of us, so we have to have these meetings, these hearings. We have to have these bills. We have to continuously and vigorously, as long as I'm chairman of this committee, we absolutely will vigorously look for ways so members of Congress or people don't have to, we don't want parents to see kids from all over the south central part of Kentucky showing up and say, I didn't realize that my child had touched so many lives. We want them to grow up so their parents can see how many lives they touch. And that's what this hearing's about. And I know, hopefully, this is what we focus on. We don't focus on a commission. There's issues for that and time for that. What we're here today is focusing on how do we protect children. And I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Well said. Thank you, and God bless you. That's why I'm here, is to protect our kids. And I'm so blessed to have a chair and a ranking member that cares so much about our children, to save our kids, whatever it takes. So with that, I'm going to yield 5 minutes to the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Pallone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to set the record straight for the people that are here today. I know I'm not suggesting that the chairman of the full committee or the chairman of the subcommittee don't care, but let's not kid the people here to suggest that these bills are going to become law. The bottom line is we passed COSA and we passed COPPA out of this committee in the last session, and the House Republican leadership refused to bring these bills to the floor. And you know why? They're in the pocket of big tech. And the big tech does not care at all about kids. If you went to the inauguration, you may have noticed that standing or sitting behind President Trump were all the leaders, the CEOs of big tech. They tell the Republicans what to do. Now, sure, our guys here in the committee are well-intended, want to do things for the public, care about the kids, but it doesn't matter because the House Republican leadership, they're going to do whatever big tech wants. Big tech does not want these bills. Appreciate your being here today, but it's not going to happen, not as long as big tech controls what goes on here, and they do. Now, for years, the members of this committee have worked together on a constructive, bipartisan basis to pass a broad array of consumer protection legislation. We've regularly delegated enforcement authority to the Federal Trade Commission, an agency that has consistently been America's strongest champion against the abuses of big tech. It's the FTC that enforces and prevents the abuses of big tech. But big tech's scammers, their exploitation of nation's children and adults, both on and offline, that's what we see every day, and it's getting worse. But I find it extraordinary that the Republican majority has called this hearing to discuss ways to increase online safety, particularly for our nation's children, while willfully ignoring the outrageous, unlawful, and unconstitutional attempt just last week by President Trump to fire 2 duly nominated and confirmed members of the FTC. My Republican colleagues must understand that President Trump's unlawful attempt to fire the FTC commissioners fundamentally undermines the FTC's ability to continue to protect American consumers. And yet, rather than taking this threat seriously and holding the Trump administration accountable, Republicans invited as a witness one of the contributors to Project 2025, which is the problem here. This is the playbook the administration is using to create an oligarchy that benefits billionaires at the expense of everyone else, including little kids. In creating the FTC, Congress gave the agency broad authority to protect consumers from unfair or deceptive acts or practices and unfair competition in interstate commerce. Congress recognized the FTC needed to be independent from political pressure and be structured to ensure a measure of consistency across administrations so that it could conduct its work in an even-handed manner. And Congress created an agency led by commissioners from both parties who cannot be removed by any president on a political whim, but only for, and I quote, inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance. And before now, only one president had attempted to fire an FTC commissioner without good cause, and the Supreme Court made it clear in the FTC Act that Congress expressly and properly limited the ability of the executive branch to do so. But last week, in attempting to illegally fire Commissioners Slaughter and Bedoya, President Trump did not claim that they engage in inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance. To make such a claim would have been impossible because the commissioners have served with great distinction. So I just want to say, I guess it's obvious that I'm outraged by President Trump's illegal attempts to oust these 2 commissioners. It certainly seems that President Trump's biggest donors, including Elon Musk, bought not just a seat to the front row at the president's inauguration, but also an agreement that companies will not face accountability for their misdeeds. And unfortunately, committee Republicans are likely to ignore this flagrant corruption and violation of the law. So, look, I just want to say, I know that we have today with us one of the commissioners, Commissioner Slaughter. I still call her the commissioner, and behind him is sitting Commissioner Bedoya. And I call them the commissioners because they were not fired. They are still the commissioners. And I'm hopeful at some point they're going to take this to court and the courts will overturn it, as the courts have with almost everything that President Trump has done. And the question really is when that happens, is the president going to abide by the courts? Or is he going to say that I don't care about the courts because I don't care about the rule of law and I don't care about democracy? So we'll see at one point, hopefully the members on the other side of the aisle, stand up and, defend the rule of law. But so far, I don't see it, unfortunately. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Now I'm going to recognize the witnesses here today, or at least introduce them. We appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for the sacrifice you're making, and thank you for doing what you know best, protecting our kids, and that's why we're here today. First is Ms. Yiota Souras, Chief Legal Officer, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Thanks for being here, ma'am. Appreciate it so much. Ms. Rebecca Kelly Slaughter, former Commissioner, Federal Trade Commission. Thanks for your appearance today. Ms. Dawn Hawkins, Senior Advisor, National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Thank you again for being here today. Thanks for your bravery. And Ms. Clare Morell, Fellow Ethics and Public Policy Center. Thank you again for being here. So what I'm going to do now is I'll recognize our first witness, Ms. Souras. You're recognized, ma'am, for your 5 minutes of testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Technical issue. Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Bilirakis, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Yiota Souras, and I'm the Chief Legal Officer for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC. For over 40 years, NCMEC has operated as a nonprofit organization to help find missing children, reduce child sexual exploitation, and prevent child victimization. I'm honored to be here today to share NCMEC's perspective on the escalating threats to child safety online. Congress has designated NCMEC to operate 16 programs relating to our mission. In many cases, we are the first call a parent or law enforcement makes when a child goes missing or has been exploited. As a clearinghouse, we support law enforcement in identifying, locating, and recovering child victims. We provide child safety education to schools and communities, and we support victims and families experiencing the trauma of a missing or exploited child. Over the past 27 years, we have handled hundreds of millions of reports relating to child pornography, or as it's more appropriately referred to, child sexual abuse material, or CSAM. Based on our work, we know that dangers to children online are expanding in severity, complexity, and scope. Today, we are witnessing new threats to children online, including the use of generative artificial intelligence to exploit children and increases in children being victimized through online enticement and financial sextortion. We need bipartisan, bicameral congressional action to address these new threats. We must provide more remedies to child victims, new tools for law enforcement, and enforceable regulations that incentivize online platforms to better detect, report, and remove child sexual exploitation. While the threats are formidable, Congress has a real opportunity this term to confront the realities of child sexual exploitation and move legislation to protect children. NCMEC supports many of the legislative initiatives pending this term, including the following. The Take It Down Act has broad bipartisan support and will meaningfully impact child safety. NCMEC is encouraged by today's hearing and urges the committee to pass this bill. Law enforcement has informed NCMEC that cyber tip-line reports containing nude or sexually exploitative images of a child often cannot be pursued because they do not constitute CSAM. This prevents law enforcement from intervening at the earliest indication that a child is being exploited, which is especially critical when a child is being enticed or sextorted. This legal gap leaves children at risk. Take It Down closes this gap by criminalizing the knowing publication of these images, whether real or created by nudify apps or AI technology. For child survivors, a primary goal is to ensure their images are taken down and not accessible online. The Take It Down Act will achieve this by establishing a notice and removal requirement for online platforms. Another important tool to safeguard children online is age gating, enforced by robust age assurance measures. NCMEC is aware of debates regarding whether online platforms or device and app store providers should be responsible. NCMEC believes that the best approach is an all-of-the-above strategy. We support solutions that enforce shared responsibility between online platforms and device and app store providers while ensuring parents have necessary tools to help protect their children. Online platforms, device and app store providers, and parents cannot on their own effectively protect children. Each must be involved to ensure children have safe online experiences. NCMEC also strongly supports the right of a child victim to have their day in court and bring a civil lawsuit against all parties, including online platforms that host or facilitate their abuse. Currently, a child victimized by the endless recirculation of CSAM in which they are depicted has no civil recourse against an online platform. NCMEC recognizes the nuance required to legislate this private right of action. We remain available to assist the committee in crafting a remedy for as many children as possible that also can garner sufficient support to pass Congress. Finally, we must update the cyber tip line reporting process. Under current law, there are no requirements for what information an online platform must include in cyber tip line reports. This too often leads to companies submitting incomplete reports that law enforcement cannot investigate. Too many reports are submitted without basic information, including the identity and location of the victim and offender, and in some cases, even the actual content being reported. Platforms must be required to report specific information to the cyber tip line and to produce annual transparency reports. In closing, thank you again for the opportunity to appear before this subcommittee. NCMEC encourages Congress to pass the Take It Down Act and move legislation that holds online platforms accountable, ensures technology does not overtake child protection laws, and requires the online community to share responsibility. Like you, NCMEC believes that every child deserves a safe childhood. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
I thank you for your testimony, and we're going to pass that Take It Down Act, believe me. Next, we have Ms. Slaughter. You're recognized for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Thank you. Chairman Guthrie and Bilirakis, ranking members Pallone and Schakowsky, and members of the subcommittee, good morning. I am Rebecca Kelly Slaughter. I am a mother of 4, and I have been honored to serve as FTC Commissioner for nearly 7 years. In fact, it was exactly 7 years ago on this date that President Trump first announced my nomination. Thank you for inviting me to testify about the FTC's vital consumer protection work involving online harms and to explain how that work is undermined by President's attempt to fire me and Commissioner Bedoya in direct violation of the FTC Act and binding Supreme Court precedent. Congress created the FTC to protect Americans from unfair methods of competition and unfair and deceptive business practices. Congress structured the FTC as a bipartisan 5-member board whose members may be removed only for cause. The FTC's structure emphasizes accountability to you, the people's representatives, and it shields the FTC from undue influence or political interference so that we can protect American children, consumers, workers, and honest businesses without fear or favor. In my time at the FTC, I have given my all to our vital mission, seeking to build bipartisan consensus around issues such as children's privacy, the right to repair, and affordable medicine. Commissioner Bedoya has worked just as hard. Yet last week, we became the first FTC commissioners any president has purported to fire since FDR unlawfully removed Commissioner Humphrey in 1933. The Supreme Court unanimously rejected that move, and its decision has served as the foundation of independence not only at the FTC, but also at many other multi-member agencies such as the Federal Reserve. So why did the president try to fire us last week? I can only assume that the president or his advisors are afraid of our voices. My colleague, Chairman Ferguson, a Republican, is running the FTC and has his key staff in place. As a minority commissioner, my vote may not change the outcome of any particular matter, but I can provide accountability before Congress and the public. Removing me and Commissioner Bedoya means that we will all remain in the dark if the FTC veers off course, or if the president orders Chairman Ferguson to treat the most powerful companies in the world, like the big tech firms whose CEOs flanked the president at his inauguration, with kid gloves. The illegal firings also sent a clear message to the FTC's majority commissioners. You now work under the shadow of arbitrary removal by the president. Today's oligarchs have surely noticed that it is not the independent experts at the FTC or the courts who will decide their fate, but the president himself, and I fear what corporate lawbreakers will get away with. Commissioner Bedoya and I will be challenging our illegal removals. We are working to vindicate the law Congress passed because we care deeply about the honesty and the integrity of the FTC's work and how it affects the American people. I need to take a moment to address the FTC staff directly. Thank you. I see you. I see your hard work. Keep it up. I deeply appreciate it. Take care of each other and do every day what you do best, the right thing in the right way for the right reasons. We'll see you soon. Turning specifically to the world of online harms, the FTC has done extraordinary work, much of it on a bipartisan basis, especially to combat harms to children. But I worry about the future of that work. In my written testimony, I describe 4 recent actions that may now be imperiled, including protecting kids from AI chatbots, updating children's privacy rules, ending video games' unfair practice of hooking kids on loot boxes, and studying social media services' privacy practices. I have the same concern about the entirety of the FTC's work. There is one other matter that I worry about most immediately that I know is of concern to this committee. The FTC staff are currently alleging that the 3 big pharmacy middlemen, the PBMs, illegally inflated the price of insulin. That case is pending before the Commission's administrative court. Aside from myself and Commissioner Bedoya, no other sitting commissioner can participate in that case. I honestly don't know what will happen next. On these pressing issues and others, the presence of minority commissioners at the FTC lets us provide transparency into our work, which is essential for accountability. As Chairman Ferguson said recently, it's helpful for markets, for courts, for litigants, for government transparency to have people in the other party pointing out abuses and dissents. Whether it is a Republican or a Democrat in the White House, we will all be worse off without those voices. Since President Trump first appointed me to the FTC, I have fostered collaborative dialogue and compromise with each of my Republican colleagues. Commissioner Bedoya and I each swore an oath to serve the American people and the Constitution, and we will stand by these oaths. I believe the courts will vindicate our rights to do our jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Slaughter. Next, I'll call Ms. Hawkins for her, you're recognized for your 5 minutes of testimony.
Thank you,
again for
Chairman
being here.
Guthrie and Bilirakis. Thank you, Ranking Members Pallone and Mrs. Schakowsky. I'm grateful to be here among you. I'm Dawn Hawkins with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, a nonpartisan nonprofit with the Law Center prosecuting landmark cases against tech giants. I've spent 16 years fighting for human dignity, and as a mother of 5, like millions of parents, this fight is deeply personal. Tech companies built empires on our kids' backs. They've grown more profitable and less accountable. Meanwhile, since 2019, Congress has held 23 hearings but has passed nothing to prevent harm. This can be the Congress that finally says our kids deserve better. It's been nearly 30 years since Congress passed laws to protect kids online. The Communications Decency Act, meant to help platforms remove sexually explicit content, has been distorted into near total immunity, even for platforms that profit from child sexual abuse material. COPPA, meant to shield kids under 13 from greedy advertisers, has become a loophole. At 13, companies stop protecting youth right when risks skyrocket. And now Congress is considering a 2.0 version that still locks parents out of supporting the age group most targeted by predators, young teens. That's how we got here, an internet policy built for profit, not protection. We must change the legal and economic incentives so another generation of children are not sacrificed. I want our youth to thrive online, but right now, this digital world is a danger zone, and it's not by accident, it's by design. If I, who live and breathe this work, can't protect my kids from the loopholes, how can other parents? And yet big tech tells us just monitor better, educate more, keep your kids offline. But how dare they? Parents aren't failing, the system is failing us. When Apple's parental controls take 20 steps to set up, when Roblox says strangers can't contact your child, but predators still reach them, when SnapMap shares kids' real-time location, and YouTube Kids serves sexualized or violent content through autoplay. Parents aren't just left in the dark, we're handed broken flashlights and told to find our way. Meanwhile, companies hide behind half-baked tools and PR campaigns, but it's an illusion. In the Massachusetts TikTok case, internal documents show that their reset button, designed to help teens escape harmful algorithms promoting suicide, eating disorders, and pornography, was deliberately hard to use and reset after just 200 videos. That's only 10 minutes of scrolling. Let me tell you what's really happening. A teen boy is sextorted after one image. Within hours, he spirals into despair and he takes his own life. We've heard about Eli, but there are 41 others that I know about. His parents will never hear, their parents will never hear their laugh again because a predator reached them through the screen and Instagram did nothing about it. In another case, a girl rejects a boy at school and he retaliates by creating AI-generated CSAM that look just like her, and he uploads it to pornography websites, and she's still fighting to get them taken down. But apps that enable that kind of abuse are in the app stores rated safe for 4-year-olds. Another boy is targeted on Snapchat, tricked into creating CSAM. His abuse is uploaded to Twitter, viewed 160,000 times. Even after submitting proof that he was just a young teenage boy, Twitter refused to take it down. And when sued, Twitter, now X, argued that profiting from this abuse alongside sex traffickers is protected under CDA 230. Our lawyers are litigating this case right now. These stories are horrific but not rare. Apple and Google allow children, the front door to all of this is the app stores. Apple and Google allow children to silently sign contracts that give apps access to their camera, contracts, and location, yet their entire parental control system is based on age ratings. They label nudifying tools, chat roulette apps, and strip club simulators as safe for 9-year-olds. We have to act. Congress has the tools, and we have bipartisan solutions. Like car safety, online protection requires layers, seatbelts, airbags, and speed limits. 5 steps. We need to reform CDA 230 so platforms can't hide behind immunity. 2, pass the App Store Accountability Act to empower parents before harm occurs with real ratings and verified parental consent. 3, enact the Kids Online Safety Act to require platforms to design with well-being, not addiction in mind. 4, advance the Take It Down, Protect, No Fakes, and Defiance Act. And 5, don't cement the myth that teens become digital adults at age 13, as the current COPPA 2.0 would do. Predators are thriving and children are dying. It should never again be easier to groom a child than to protect one. Please don't wait. Thank you.
I want to thank you for that powerful testimony. We appreciate it so very much, and we hear you. Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Morell. You're recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Guthrie, Chairman Bilirakis, Ranking Member Pallone, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Clare Morell, and I'm a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, where I direct our Technology and Human Flourishing project. Over the last several years, I have put out reports and model legislation for protecting kids online, now implemented in many states. I'm also the mom of 3 and author of the forthcoming book, The Tech Exit, A Practical Guide to Freeing Kids and Teens from Smartphones, which will be published this June. I'm here today because parents critically need better laws to back them up. If you take one thing away from my testimony today, let it be this: America's families need immediate action from Congress. Tech companies want us to believe no more legislation is necessary. They have worked to convince us that if parents just enable time limits and parental controls, children will be safe. But leaving it up to parents is failing America's children. Time limits do nothing to address the underlying addictive design of these technologies. Their products hijack human brain vulnerabilities, especially of developing brains. And a brain exposed frequently to social media resembles a brain hooked on the most highly addictive drugs. Even if a child is only on social media for 15 minutes a day, the constant craving it creates means kids are mentally consumed by what's happening on the app, even when they aren't using it. Kids take the virtual world with them long after they leave it. Social media's parental controls are also supposed to protect teens from bad actors and content, but they really only allow parents to set time limits and manage certain settings. They give parents no oversight of a child's feed or messages. Plus, the teen has to accept the parent's supervision and can cancel it at any time. In what sense is that a control? Most of the popular apps like Snapchat, TikTok, and Discord also block access to third-party controls or filters that a parent may purchase, which means when a child can get to Pornhub inside of Snapchat in just 5 clicks without ever leaving the app, a parent would never know. The ineffectiveness of filters and controls has ushered in a tidal wave of online pornography exposure among children. The average age of first exposure is now 12, and kids are not just seeing it. ER nurses increasingly see children sexually assaulting each other. America's children are suffering. Parents are exasperated. They can't do it alone. Recently, a mom found me after an event and with tears in her eyes said, "We did everything right. We had all the controls on. We had no idea our daughter got a burner phone and got sucked into pornography and dark, erotic places on social media." Leaving it to parents will never work when there is zero parental involvement required whatsoever in the creation of a social media account or in setting up a device or in downloading apps. Lastly, parents on their own can't protect kids from the collective harms caused by digital technologies. Even if a few teens use social media in a school or organization, it affects the entire cohort of young people, including those who don't use it at all. Time limits and parental controls can't change these negative group effects, nor can they protect children from seeing porn or beheading videos on another child's unprotected device. These are collective action problems. They require policy solutions. So what should Congress do? I offer a few suggestions. First, restrict social media out of childhood. Congress should age restrict social media to 16 or 18 years old, just as it has age restricted other addictive and unsafe products for kids, like alcohol or tobacco. 2, require App Store age verification and parental consent, like the App Store Accountability Act. Congress should pass a law requiring app stores to verify the age of each user, and for minor users, require parental consent for each app download or in-app purchase. 3, pass a federal age verification law for pornography websites, like the Screen Act. 19 states have now done so, but we need protection nationwide. Put the onus back where it belongs, on the porn sites rather than parents. 4, open up greater legal liability for online platforms by reforming Section 230 and by further empowering existing authorities like the Federal Trade Commission and states' attorney general with tools like greater product design liabilities for platforms. And 5, ensure there is legal accountability for AI so that companies will be compelled to make their products safe or otherwise pay the costs. Generative AI products should not receive Section 230 immunity. As a mother of 3, and on behalf of all parents across America, we need your help. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so very much. I want to thank the entire panel for their testimony today, and I want to thank the audience for being here today, the parents and the child advocates and the children. You really do make a difference. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with yield to myself for 5 minutes for questioning, and I'm going to start with Ms. Souras. Thank you again for being here today and for all the work you and your colleagues at NCMEC do. I have no doubt your work is directly responsible for saving the lives of countless children. We appreciate you so much. Heartbreakingly, our country is plagued with criminals who search for loopholes to terrorize Americans with non-consensual intimate images. This must stop. The Senate recently passed the Takedown Act, targeting the abhorrent criminals who engage in this practice. How will Take It Down protect children from these predators and give Americans the tools to remove it from online, please?
Thank you, Chairman Bilirakis, for the question. I highlighted two of the most important factors of Take It Down in my written testimony in great detail, but there are really two primary ways that Take It Down will provide additional remedies to protect children online, both from real, nude, sexually exploitive images, and also the AI-generated images as well. So firstly, there is currently a legal gap that makes it very difficult for law enforcement to investigate and for prosecutors to pursue cases that involve nude or sexually exploitative images of a child that do not meet the legal definition of child pornography. The legal definition of child pornography requires sexually explicit conduct, sexual intercourse, and other very extreme forms of sexual interaction. But nude and sexually exploitative images often fall short of that definition. So crucially, Take It Down will simply criminalize those images that currently law enforcement is struggling to find the proper avenue to investigate and pursue. In addition to filling that legal gap, as we talked about, the Take It Down bill will create a formal mechanism for notice and takedown, or notice and removal, as it's sometimes referred to. At NCMEC, we hear from survivors that one of the core things that they are seeking is just to ensure their images aren't online anymore, to ensure that they can have control over those images when they do get circulated again. So Take It Down will create really a process for a victim or somebody who's working closely with that victim to alert social media, an online platform, when a child's image is online, and then it will create a process by which that social media platform has to be on notice and remove that content within a certain period of days.
Thank you so much. Next, Ms. Hawkins. I was reading through your testimony, and I must say, as a father myself and a grandfather, I really appreciate your comments on the difficulties parents face when trying to protect their children online. Your testimony highlights many options to protect children online, including establishing protections in COSA, giving parents more control over what applications are downloaded from app stores, and updating rules related to minors' personal information, to name just a few. So the question is, why is it important for Congress to legislate on multiple fronts as opposed to move one bill that tackles only one of these particular issues?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. You're absolutely right. We wouldn't protect cars, kids in cars with just seatbelts. We need airbags and car seats and crash-resistant features because kids' safety deserves layers. And the same thing happens for children online. These bills all tackle different entry points for harm, such as design flaws, parental disempowerment, image-based sexual abuse, and predatory contracts. Together, they can form a net of protection, but alone they leave gaps and our children fall through.
Thank you so very much. Next, I'm going to go ahead and ask this question quickly because I want to stick to the 5 minutes. Parents need more tools and children need more safeguards. So this is for Ms. Morell. What tools and safeguards should exist online to protect children? I know you have brought this up, obviously, but do you want to elaborate briefly? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and I know we're short on time. I would just say, as Ms. Hawkins said, we need multiple layers. I think a critical tool is just actual parental involvement in the creation of a social media account or in downloading apps. Right now, parents are not part of that process, and so even if a parent wants their child off social media, a child can easily enter their birth date, agree to a whole host of terms and conditions, enter a contract with a tech company, all without a parent's knowledge. And so the critical tools I think we need are putting parents back in the driver's seat of their kids' online experiences.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now I yield 5 minutes to the ranking member of the subcommittee, Ms. Schakowsky.
I take great pride in having been a consumer protection leader for years and years in the state legislature and here now in the Congress. But one of the things that has been such a help is to have the Federal Trade Commission to be the cop on the beat to make sure that these things are happening. If this were to go through as the president wanted it, which would be illegal, so I'm hoping that you will take this to court, what would how would this affect consumers and all the people who need the work that you do? If you could tell me that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. The FTC does very vital consumer protection work, including advocacy, including getting money back to people who have been harmed. In fact, last year, the FTC returned $337 million back into the pockets of people who had it wrongfully taken from them from frauds and scams. And it does that on a bipartisan basis through changes in administration, through transitions. That bipartisan structure of the FTC that Congress created provides enormous value to the people that we serve, the children, the parents, the consumers, the workers, the honest businesses, because it provides continuity and credibility in our work. Let me give you a couple of examples. There are ways in which the commissioners come together and find consensus on important cases and important matters that protect consumers. So for example, when we're thinking about children, we brought a case against Epic where we got $500 million in penalties from Epic for how they treated children through Fortnite, including how kids were paying, tricked into paying for games, and also, importantly, to the witnesses in the subcommittee, allowing strangers to have access to children to communicate through that online game. That was an important bipartisan effort of the committee. My former colleague, Commissioner Wilson, wrote a very powerful concurrence in that case about that work related to children in particular. Sometimes we don't find consensus, and that is also important for the commission because we can help provide accountability and transparency to Congress and to the public about other ways things could be done, maybe more relief that was left on the table, or where commissioners think there was an overreach by the commission. That's also an important thing to highlight. So I think the structure of the FTC that Congress created drives towards bipartisan consensus, continuity, credibility, and provides accountability and transparency even where that consensus isn't reached. And all of that redounds to the benefit of the people that we serve.
So what you're saying, though, is that because of the ability of the Federal Trade Commission, things really can happen. I mean, there are laws that make it safer for our kids and our consumers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The Federal Trade Commission administers the Federal Trade Commission Act, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and various other laws that are designed by Congress to protect children, to protect consumers. And we want that administration to be done without fear or favor, impartially based on the facts and the law in front of the commission, not based on fear of removal for failure to do a favor for a political donor or one of the big tech companies that don't particularly care for our aggressive enforcement approach.
Well, I want to thank you, Congresswoman Slaughter. Congresswoman? No, that's not correct. For the work that you do, and let us hope that the courts will decide that the Federal Trade Commission is the appropriate way that we protect our consumers, and you do it in a bipartisan way, except that right now the Democrats have been excluded from this, so we have to fight back. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. And next we have, we're going to recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Guthrie, from the great state of Kentucky, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thanks, and I appreciate the ranking member saying Congresswoman Slaughter, because she was a great lady. She represented upstate New York, but you could tell from her accent she was from Appalachia, Kentucky, couldn't you? So thanks for that. You know, getting back to, as you mentioned, thanks, Ms. Hawkins, for mentioning Eli, and you look at, as a parent and a grandparent now, obviously have responsibilities and roles. But we saw with Eli was, they think, was just a one-time, as you mentioned, into one evening. It happened in one evening, and so we all need to be alert, but you can't be alert 100% of every second of the day, 100% of the time. So it's important that we have these new laws in place. And Eli has mentioned he was a twin, so he was a preemie. I'd mentioned some of the things he had to live with in life. And so I didn't mention that, his sister's now spending the first 2 weeks of her 16 years on earth without him. So you think about that, just all the pain that this has caused. And just it's hard to imagine what families have gone through. And so Ms. Souras and Ms. Hawkins, would you just share how the Take It Down Act would help us hold these people responsible? Other laws, you said COSA, Take It Down Act particularly, would hold these people responsible. Start with Ms. Souras, if you would.
Thank you, Chairman Guthrie. Absolutely. Take It Down, as I described earlier, is really going to fill for children this crucial legal gap that exists right now. I think people often think that any image of a child that may be exploitative in some way, that may include some nudity, automatically is child pornography. And under the law, that's actually not accurate. Child pornography is a very severe, extreme form of sexual exploitation. It requires sexually explicit conduct. But we see now this proliferation, especially in enticement cases and financial sextortion cases, as you mentioned with your constituent, and absolutely with AI-generated imagery. We see nude and sexually exploitative imagery proliferating more, and there simply aren't legal avenues to address this appropriately. So we need to take it down. We need to fill that legal gap. We need to give law enforcement tools and prosecutors tools so that they can intervene at the earliest possible moment that a child is being enticed or sextorted or abused online, and they can prevent further abuse.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins.
And I'll add, too, that the Take It Down Act would bring significant hope to individuals like Eli or Gavin Guffey, Mr. Fry in South Carolina. A lot of these youth feel hopeless because we're told again and again, if you make a mistake, if you take a photo of yourself, if you share it online and it gets out there, there's nothing that you can do. And these predators, they just, that's what they use, that kind of desperation. And this would give law enforcement and these youth, and adults, frankly, too, hope that we could do something about it and we can take this kind of abuse content down.
Okay, Ms. Morell, do you have a comment on that as well? Oh, sorry.
I would agree that I think I'm really concerned about the threats of AI as the kind of next wave of threats to our kids online. And I think that we need solutions that are going to make it really clear that there will be consequences if AI products are used to harm kids.
Okay, so, and also the three of you again, so it requires websites and social media platforms that Take It Down Act to remove non-consensual intimate images within 48 hours of request. Finally, giving survivors and their families, giving them a new avenue for recourse. As an advocate who works with many of these families, can you speak to why providing new notice and takedown tools are so critical? You want to start, Ms. Souras? Yeah.
Absolutely, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, for many survivors, it's really not about criminal remedies. It's not about prosecuting somebody. It's not about going to court with their own civil lawsuit. It's simply about making sure those images do not continue to circulate or not online. So notice and takedown programs, and NCMEC operates one. Obviously, we're a nonprofit. It is a voluntary initiative that we operate. Social media platforms can comply with our request or not when we serve a notice and takedown on a company.
Do you have instances of giving a takedown notice and being told no?
We have actually on our website a list of companies that are not responsive or take an unacceptably long time to respond.
So that's publicly available. That's good. That is.
Absolutely, and happy to provide those details after the hearing. But what the notice and takedown provision within Take It Down Act does is it codifies that. So it provides some teeth. It provides a formal process. It requires and puts companies on notice that they must actually engage.
Ms. Hawkins?
We have also requested our attorneys that content be removed and the companies ignore. Google, for example, told us that a victim of sex trafficking, her trafficker is in prison, that there were no signs of coercion in the material, so they wouldn't remove it. We need the Take It Down Act because otherwise this content just proliferates more and more. I'm a victim myself of image-based sexual abuse. Now that my kids are about to get online, I live in absolute fear about what my kids are going to see about me.
Thank you. Thank you for showing, my time's up, but for the importance of this. Thank you.
I thank the chairman. Thank you, gentleman. Yields back. Now I recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Pallone, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I've said, President Trump's attempted illegal firings of the Democratic FTC commissioners is not only a blatant violation of the law, but also puts American consumers in danger of kneecapping the very agencies designed by Congress to protect all of us from unfair and deceptive business practices and unfair methods of competition. And I have to say again that I am disappointed that my Republican colleagues, including those on this committee, have remained silent as the president threatens the independence of this agency. And Republicans on this committee have routinely said that they care deeply about protecting all people, and especially our kids, from online harm. I heard you all say that today. But now you remain silent as the agency that protects consumers is threatened. And make no mistake, this is just the beginning. President Trump has sent a clear message that he's willing to ignore the rule of law and Supreme Court precedent to benefit himself and his billionaire buddies. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask, is he not? Chairman Guthrie's not here, right? No? All right, then let me ask Chairman Bilirakis, are you planning on holding an oversight hearing or any kind of hearing to demand answers from the Trump administration about this illegal action by the president with regard to the FTC commissioners that I believe harms consumers and harm our children? Are you planning on any kind of hearing on that issue, if you will?
Yeah, look, I have to speak with the full committee chair, and I'd be happy to discuss it with you as well. The three of us can get together. As a matter of fact, we can even talk to the ranking member of the committee, the subcommittee. So, yeah, we can have those discussions.
All right, I appreciate that. I'm concerned that as President Trump escalates his attacks on our democracy and gleefully destroys the institutions created by Congress to benefit all Americans, I just wonder if there's any action that President Trump could take that will result in an oversight hearing on this committee. Because I do believe that part of this committee's responsibility is to review actions taken by the president, regardless of the fact that he is a Republican. And the illegal attempted firing of Commissioners Slaughter and Bedoya, I think, is just the beginning. And if my Republican colleagues refuse to speak out, they're going to show everyone that they're willing to put the profits of big tech billionaires ahead of kids' online safety. So let me go to Commissioner Slaughter. In your view, if this illegal move is allowed to stand, is anything stopping President Trump from removing any sitting commissioner, including those from the Republican Party, for launching investigations he does not agree with or refusing to dismiss cases against his crooked big tech buddies? I know you got into this a little in your opening, but you got 2 minutes. If take the 2 minutes if you can to talk more about it, if you will.
Thank you, sir. You're correct. The same constitutional and statutory principle that protects me from removal, protects majority commissioners from removal, protects members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, protects members at many other agencies. And so if I can legally be removed in violation of the plain language of the statute, I don't think there's anything that would stop other commissioners from being removed, including the majority commissioners. And I think it's worth pointing out, relevant to the conversation we're having here today, I agree with so much of what the witnesses at this table are saying. They're highlighting incredibly important issues. My colleague, Commissioner Bedoya, has been a particular thought leader on the issue of kids and the attention economy and online addictive behavior. This is something we care incredibly deeply about. And in fact, in January of this year, we took the unusual step of making public the fact that the FTC referred to the Department of Justice a complaint against Snap for the harms caused by its AI chatbot directed at children. My colleague, now Chairman Ferguson, dissented and expressed concerns about the First Amendment rights of those chatbots. That's an important conversation that we can have on a bipartisan commission, but the underlying concern about the harms to kids as these technologies are developing is enormously important, requires bipartisan attention. And I really worry that not only is the commission deprived of the voices of myself and Commissioner Bedoya, but that the Republican commissioners at the FTC will similarly feel pressure to avoid taking actions that may be consistent and required by the law, but unpopular with some of the president's supporters.
Thank you so much. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back now. I recognize the Vice Chair of the Subcommittee, Mr. Falter, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have to admit, I might be a little bit confused if I'm in the right committee hearing. We seem to have got sidetracked into presidential branch personnel discussions and food prices. So I do have some questions, but they have to do with kids' online safety and that subject matter. Am I in the right place? Do I have that subject matter correct? All right, thank you. So, Ms. Morell, this question has to do with Section 230 immunity, and we've had a lot of discussions on that in the past, but I'd like to just talk with you for a minute about how Section 230 immunity protection should apply when you insert an AI algorithm to that. This is uncharted territory for us, and could you just, do you believe that immunity protection should be in place if there's an AI algorithm that's clearly changing the content or redirecting it?
I do not. I think it's clear that AI products are not hosting third-party speech. Section 230 was meant to protect platforms for liability for hosting third-party content. AI chatbots, AI tools are actually a product. It is product design. It is not meant to be protected by Section 230, and it is not hosting another person's speech. It is a computer-generated product. People are training the AI on certain data, and it's being taught to recognize certain patterns. And so the output of AI is actually a just amalgamation of data that has been recognized by a process. And so to me, that clearly falls under product design, not under Section 230 immunity, which is meant to protect platforms from liability for hosting the speech of other people.
So those comments make sense to me, and I would parallel your thought process there. Our challenge as a legislative body is trying to put this, how do we put this into a legislative format? Mm-hmm. And if we're able to do that, how do we make that enforceable? And I realize this might be out of your lane, but if you have any comments on that, I'd be interested in hearing enforceability.
Yes, my brief comment would be, I think a very narrow solution would just be a clarification, and a bipartisan bill was introduced in the Senate to this effect last Congress, that would just clarify that Section 230 immunity should not apply to generative AI. And what that means then is that there is a path for litigation for these companies to be held accountable for harms caused by those products. And so it doesn't actually need to necessarily prescribe all the actions, but it just opens up legal liability. And that is what we see in America, that the way we typically hold private companies accountable for harms to consumers is through channels of litigation. And so I think having that open would compel AI companies to make sure that their products are not harming consumers.
Got it. Ms. Souras, just your perspective, same question, 230 immunity, AI intervention there, but in the lens of sexual exploitation. Your comments or thoughts?
Absolutely. So I definitely join in the opinion of my colleague at the end of the panel table. I would also add that AI is actually joining as a partner in content creation. So in addition to simply not hosting third-party content, it is part of the creative process. We see offenders going on using text or image-based AI tools to really create the vision that they have for what they want to see, what kind of sexual exploitation they want to see of a child, to engage with AI sexually as a child. So again, AI clearly is beyond the scope of Section 230 because, again, not hosting, but actually creating content with you as the user. My view, and I would want to give it a little more deliberation, I don't think that needs to be clarified within Section 230. I think we need to see lawsuits filed, and we need to see how courts will address this, because when you look at what AI is doing, again, it is clearly outside the scope of what Section 230 was intended to protect.
I'm going to stay with you. We've only got 30 seconds left, but on the same vein, deep fakes, and I'm concerned about the impact of that. is there a legislative or is there a role for Congress in perhaps identifying digital forgeries or quick comments on deep fakes and how we might deal with that with enforcement?
Absolutely. I would just highlight 3 items. So we're dealing with criminal provisions and take it down. I think there also is room for Congress to look at civil remedies as well for victims who are abused or exploited through deep fakes. But I also think Congress has a real very important role in looking at preventative measures. How are companies, AI companies, being allowed to red team, to use technology to ensure their products are safe before they rush to market?
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I appreciate it very much. Thanks for yielding back. And now I'll recognize my friend and partner in the COSA legislation that we're going to keep pushing forward, get it across the finish line this time. And I'll recognize my fellow Floridian, Ms. Castor, for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Well, thank you, Chairman Bilirakis, and you deserve a lot of credit for helping to hammer out the Kids Online Safety Act and moving the legislation through committee last year. You know, for many years, the committee has worked on this because the online harms to kids, the exploitation is plain as day to parents and families across the country. Big tech platforms use their manipulative designs to addict kids to their products and funnel them to harmful or exploitive content. They collect massive amounts of personal information, some of it incredibly sensitive, to fuel their algorithms, always elevating their profits over kids' safety. That's why I partnered with Rep. Bilirakis and Tim Walberg, leaders in the Senate, a lot of the advocates in the audience today to help establish safeguards for kids online. COSA would provide young people and parents with the tools, safeguards, transparency needed. It's a design code. COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, bans the big tech platforms from collecting the private data. You need both working together. COPPA, remember, would ban advertising targeted to kids and teens, create an eraser button for parents and kids to eliminate that personal information online. But both rely on a strong Federal Trade Commission to enforce the law. The bills passed out of the Energy and Commerce Committee on September 18th of last year. So we pressed the Speaker to bring them up for a vote. It was passed bipartisan in the Senate, over 60 votes, probably, I think it was about 90 votes. September 18th, October, we pressed the Speaker Mike Johnson and Steve Scalise to bring it up. We pressed in November. Parents and advocates kept on it. They pressed in December and are demoralized today because the Republican Speaker and Majority Leader blocked it. Even in the face of the Surgeon General's report, the higher rates of suicides, all of the tragedies that are all too plain today, the pornography that is so exploitative online, and all of the addiction. So then the parents, I have to say, were very dejected, as many of us were at the inauguration, to see these big tech CEOs have a front row seat at President Trump's swearing in. And then what happens last week? The president takes the cops off the beat, the folks who are charged with enforcing kids' safety laws, privacy laws. It's illegal. What they've done to Commissioners Bedoya and Slaughter is illegal. The law that Congress passed years ago directed the commission to be bipartisan, independent. It's an enforcement agency to protect Americans from unfair and deceptive practices. And now they just want to throw the law out the door. And yes, we can talk about the importance of passing new legislation here in this hearing, but if you take the cops off the beat, you give the big tech CEOs a front row seat to the inauguration, you block the COSA and COPPA that was hammered out over years of work in this committee, you You know, how do you restore trust on this? And it's going to be up to this committee to stand up for parents and young people and stand up to these big tech CEOs who want to control our lives. And they're willing to sacrifice our kids' well-being for their profits. And I ask my Republican colleagues, please join us in this. Say something about taking the cops off the beat from the FTC. Commissioner Slaughter, thank you so much. You were working with your colleagues to address youth safety and privacy online. What do you recommend now going forward for this committee? And how can we restore the cops on the beat back at the FTC?
Thank you. I agree with you, excuse me, and I agree with the witnesses here that there are important laws that Congress needs to pass. I've been really concerned about whether the statutory tools the FTC has right now are up to the job, and I've advocated for privacy legislation and other tools, but the really important question is, how will those be administered? If Congress can pass the laws, how will they be administered, and will they be administered without fear or favor, which is what every American deserves, and especially what every parent sitting in this audience today deserves. I can't tell you how deeply moved I am personally by the stories that we're hearing, and how very much I want to be able to get back to work on behalf of these parents and other parents out there. We need an FTC that is fully composed to be able to do that administration of the laws without fear or favor and help protect our kids.
Thank you very much.
I thank the gentlelady. Gentlelady yields back. Now I recognize Ms. Harshberger from the great state of Tennessee for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. I want to thank you for speaking up for our kids. You know, if the examples against innocent children that you provided in your testimony do not give us members a righteous anger about this issue, then we just better check our very soul. And as a parent, and I know there's parents in the audience who have gone through this, and I am so sorry for you, because it could happen to anybody. Don't ever think that you are exempt from this happening. Young people, you listen. If you read the testimony of what happened to these children, you probably wouldn't let them online, or you probably wouldn't get online. You know, as a parent, you try to make sure your child's safe and kept away from harm, but it's very clear as technology continues to accelerate just how difficult it is to protect your kids from these predators. And if you, listen, if they're sick, depraved, possessed, and dangerous criminals are what they are. And if you really, really want to know what I think they should do with these once law enforcement catches one, then you see me after this hearing is over, and I'll be happy to tell you what I think. I want to start with Ms. Souras. Your very powerful testimony gave horrifying accounts of children being preyed upon by adult sex offenders. With the data already available, how can platforms better identify users who are posing as children?
Thank you for the question. In every other industry, there is a concept of know your customer. It's what provides safety and compliance, and that simply does not exist online. It does not exist for social media companies. So, you know, that is certainly first and foremost. They need to know who's getting online, how they are registering, if they are representing themselves truthfully, whether they're an adult, whether they're a teenager. We've seen in some of these sextortion cases that individuals are creating profiles, you know, grown men, adult men are creating profiles indicating that they are a 15, 16-year-old girl. They're allowed to post photos and create a whole persona online that to a child, especially a child who's very trusting, who's only been online for a few years, seems very authentic. Yeah. So, you know, I would definitely say they need to know their customer. There needs to be transparency reporting around how social media platforms are accomplishing that task. And there also needs to be age assurance. I think all of us have touched on that issue a little bit, that there's still a lot to be determined around how best to effectuate that. But we need to create spaces for children online that are safe. You know, we allow children to get online, have private conversations 24 hours a day with whoever is online, exchange content, videos, and images. We would never allow that in real life. Yeah. So we need to understand the environment, and we need to work together to accomplish that.
Do you think this information could prove an asset for parents monitoring their child's online activity to ensure they're interacting with their peers and not some sick, perverted monster who deserves to be locked up until Judgment Day?
Absolutely. I think all of us, agree that parents play a role here, but tech companies need to meet them, I would say, more than halfway. They need to provide tools that are comprehensible, that are easy, that are accurate, and they need to provide transparency so parents actually understand how the algorithms work and how the apps work.
It's sad to say, though, that, I interacted with middle schoolers and taught Sunday school for 24 years, and I used to say it was a fatherless society. But it's a parentless society in a lot of ways, and some of those children don't always have a parent who will protect them. I understand that the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children and law enforcement are interested in prioritizing quality of reports over pure quantity, and that one thing that's helped with that is bundling of reports. Could you tell us a little bit why that's so important, and how could we encourage more companies to do that?
Absolutely. So the process of receiving cyber tip line reports at NCMEC, really, if I can just give a brief explanation, we are operate the online reporting mechanism for reports regarding child sexual exploitation. So we are flooded with tens of millions of reports from social media companies, and then we provide those reports to law enforcement around the world, but of course domestically, federal and state, local law enforcement. There has been really, I would say, an issue in recent years as companies are increasing the volume of reports, that reports that are really related regarding the same image, regarding the same incident, regarding the same time frame, have been reported one by one as separate reports.
Yeah.
That creates a tremendous burden for law enforcement. So we were very gratified this year that Meta, which is one of the larger reporters, it is certainly one of the larger social media companies, agreed to start bundling incidents that are related. It reduces the work burden and the time that law enforcement has to consume on those reports.
Okay, very good. And I think I'm over my time, so I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. Now recognize my friend from the state of Florida, Mr. Soto, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to all the families for coming today. Sexual exploitation, bullying online, is a horrific threat to our families across the nation. Democrats, we support COSA. We voted for it already last term. We also support the Take It Down Act. And we stand with the families here today and the excruciating stories that you've had to tell us. The reason why we're so furious is because President Trump just illegally fired 2 of the 5 Federal Trade Commission commissioners. They're here today, both Ms. Slaughter and Mr. Bedoya. The FTC is already charged with protecting kids online. And so when these folks are fired, it's just outrageous to see no one say anything about it. We're talking about standing with these families, and then none of you will stand up to President Trump when he just dismantled the very commission that's charged with doing this stuff. When COSA is passed, when Take It Down is passed, it'll be the FTC that'll be enforcing it. That's why we're so frustrated today, because the commission is now paralyzed. Our Republican colleagues say nothing because they're scared of the president. So they express sympathy, but do nothing about restoring the commission. The second concern is we passed COSA last term, and it never made it to the House floor. It was killed by Speaker Johnson, and then the Internet Privacy Bill, we even had a hearing set for it to vote it out of the committee, and that hearing was pulled back in front of the entire Capitol. What an embarrassment, because the powers that be didn't want this bill to pass. Internet privacy should have passed. It passed when we had the House, and we need the Speaker, we need the Chairman and others to stand with us on this. Sympathy is not enough. Hearing all your stories is not enough. And then when we see tech billionaires having better seats than Republican governors at Trump's inaugural, that does not inspire confidence. So we've brought you here to hear your stories, and we appreciate it. My biggest fear is that nothing is going to happen again, and that would be an absolute travesty. These families deserve to be heard and not used for hearing their stories, sound sympathetic, have a listening ear, and then nothing happens. Commissioner Slaughter, it's really important that we address all the families that are here today. The FTC is already charged with whatever laws are already on the books to help protect children online. And so it would be great to kind of explain what the work that you all were doing right before you were fired.
Sure, thank you. I agree with you about the importance of thinking about the families that are here today and the people that they're representing. It is such a critical issue. It moves me so deeply as a human, as a parent, and as a federal trade commissioner. And I share the view of the parents on this panel and in this room that parents can do their absolute best. I try to do my absolute best for my children. And like some of my fellow panelists, I'm pretty expert in this stuff, and it is still really hard for me. So what we need is for the government to empower government agencies to make sure that the onus is on the companies to keep children safe in the first instant. And in order to do that well, we need the government agencies to not be afraid of those companies.
And when we pass COSA and you are reinstated as a commissioner after we win in court, what can you then do to help enforce these laws to protect these families?
Well, I can do the kinds of things I've been doing for the last 7 years as an FTC commissioner, which is taking on the biggest companies in the world without fear or favor, based on the facts and based on the law. I voted to bring lawsuits against Meta, involving privacy practices, including involving kids. I voted for a settlement with Amazon over Alexa's collection of children's voice data that was illegal. I worked with my colleague, Commissioner Wilson, a Republican, and my former colleague, Commissioner Chopra, a Democrat, to set up a study on social media and video streaming services privacy practices to provide transparency to the public, to this committee, to Congress, about all of the data that is collected by these companies and how it is used. And that study was finally published this fall. We brought cases I mentioned against Epic involving communication with children and tricking children into payments. I referenced in my testimony a case we brought just last fall against Genshin Impact for loot boxes that trick kids and get them hooked into gambling with their parents' money online.
Thank you for the extensive things you're doing. Members, these families don't need our sympathies. They've come here today for action, and I plan to vote to support these bills.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back, and I believe Mr. Alberty is next. So we'll ask you to stick within the 5 minutes if you can, and I'll recognize you for your 5 minutes of questioning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am so happy that we are having this hearing because it's on a topic that's deeply personal to me and I think incredibly important. Particularly talking about the Take It Down Act. I had the honor of last year leading the House AI Task Force, and if you read our report, you know that the issue of non-consensual intimate imagery is one of what we felt is the most pressing issues that needs to be dealt with immediately. And we feel like this is low-hanging fruit. Everyone ought to be able to agree that this is unacceptable. This is a problem that's being faced by youth across our country, and I'm hoping that maybe we can be an example here. We're in an era of intense political polarization, but I think this is something we can do on a bipartisan basis. And so I'm really happy that we're having the discussion about that today. Also, the App Store Accountability Act, I think, is an important piece of legislation. I want to talk about that a little bit. I ran a development studio that did app development for a number of years. And so this is something I know a little bit about, and this bill needs some work. You know, one of the points I wanted to make is that when we're talking about the difference between putting obligations on app stores and putting obligations on developers. Most developers of apps are not professional companies like the one I ran. They are a couple of people making an app for fun in a garage. And so to the extent that you can, you want to put obligations on the app stores, not the developers. And I'll give you a couple of concrete examples. There's specific language in the bill about when developers are required to use the application programming interface of an app store. We call it an API. And there's no need to make developers do that. The App Store can enforce those restrictions. For example, you wouldn't need, as a developer, to have to enforce an age limit. If you are saying this application is for adults only, the App Store can enforce that and not allow children to even launch the app. That's what you want to do. The same thing with purchase restrictions, same thing with time usage restrictions. So I'm hopeful that we can tighten up some of that language and make it clear where those obligations lie as this bill moves forward. And then lastly, I just wanted to spend a minute talking about enforcement, because we've heard some pretty compelling testimony this morning about the need for reforming Section 230. I think someone brought that up. Several witnesses talked about private right of action. And I think we need to be very cautious about that, because we have a number of different tools in our toolbox when it comes to enforcement. And I don't think anyone would agree that the world would be a better place if we just sued each other more often, right? That's the last resort. We want people to follow the law and be good actors without having to resort to using the courts to enforce the law. Along the years of my public service earlier, I served as the mayor of a small city. I think a number of us on the dais have had that honor. And I had an occasion where an abusive law firm rolled through town and sued a number of our businesses under the Americans with Disabilities Act for little minor technical violations. And so I saw, the flip side of this when lawsuits are used abusively. And I think what it taught me is that companies that have a profit motive for bringing these lawsuits are not suing big tech. They're suing the mom and pop people that don't have the resources to defend themselves. So what I'm saying is this should be the last resort. We have better tools. Civil penalties is great. FTC enforcement as an unfair or deceptive business practice is a powerful tool. Empowering state attorney generals is a powerful tool. Private right of action is a last resort. And I hope we can keep that in mind as we move forward, because what we don't want to create is another ADA that creates a profit incentive for abusive lawsuits against Americans and American companies. But I want to thank everyone for your very heartfelt testimony this morning. Really enjoyed the hearing. I'm looking forward to working particularly with the Take It Down Act to resolve this critically important issue. I yield back.
I appreciate it. Thank you for that valuable information. I appreciate it. Gentleman yields back. Now I recognize Ms. Trahan for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the families who are here today sharing their stories. I want to thank our witnesses, particularly FTC Commissioner Slaughter, for being here to testify today. I also saw FTC Commissioner Bedoya earlier sitting behind the witnesses, and I want to thank him for coming. Our Democratic FTC commissioners have been through a lot in the past week, and I applaud them for showing up to shed light on the administration's latest assault on independent agencies tasked with protecting hardworking Americans from corporate abuses. The president's unlawful actions don't just hinder the commissioners from doing their work. These reckless and lawless decisions will directly hurt consumers and prevent this committee from enacting strong, effective, and enforceable laws to protect Americans, especially our children, online. The FTC was purposefully designed as an independent agency by Congress. Lawmakers understood the incompatibility of partisanship and consumer protection and sought to safeguard against powerful interests influencing the work of the agency. The FTC's current Republican chair, Andrew Ferguson, understands the importance of independence as well. In his nomination hearing before the Senate Commerce Committee, Ferguson testified that, quote, consumer protection and competition are not partisan issues. In an interview with the Mercatus Center last year, Ferguson explained that independence encourages careful deliberation and allows for the commission to, quote, test theories internally before marching them out the door. Chair Ferguson makes a fundamental point that President Trump clearly does not understand. Consumer protection is not and should never be a partisan endeavor. It requires the best minds to come together to protect those who would otherwise be abused by powerful corporate actors. The subject of today's hearing is online safety, particularly for our kids. I've been outspoken about holding big tech accountable, protecting consumers' personal data, and demanding transparency from online service providers. So too have my Republican colleagues with whom I've worked on these issues over the years. But I must ask the obvious question. How can we possibly legislate to protect Americans online when the FTC, the cops on the beat of enforcing federal competition and consumer protection laws, lacks its independence? What does it mean for independent governance if the FTC's sitting commissioners can be arbitrarily fired by a capricious president. And while we talk about President Trump's illegal attempt to block dedicated consumer protectors from completing their work, we must also acknowledge the precarious environment in which FTC employees are currently doing their work. President Trump's illegal attempt to fire Commissioner Slaughter and Bedoya adds further uncertainty to a work culture laden with looming fears of mass layoffs and forced relocations. Preserving the FTC's independence while increasing its capacity should be a goal shared by every member of this committee, especially if we hope to pass meaningful legislation to protect consumers and kids online. Commissioner Slaughter, I only have one question for you today, and you can take the entire balance of the time to answer it. How important is a strong and independent FTC for watchdogging online harms, especially threats to consumer privacy?
Thank you. Excuse me. It's critically important. It is critically important. There is not another federal agency that is doing this work. There is not a substitute for the FTC in terms of policing the world's most powerful corporations and policing them without fear or favor. I think there's also no substitute for the FTC in terms of the work we do to provide transparency and accountability through our market studies, through our research program, through our testimony to Congress. That is work that I have been so honored to do, first as a minority commissioner, then as a majority commissioner, and now as a minority commissioner again. I've seen all sides of it, and I've seen the real benefits that the American people get from having a balance of perspectives on the FTC, the way Congress designed, and the way the Supreme Court upheld almost 100 years ago.
Well, thank you for your service. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. Now I recognize Ms. Kammick, my fellow Florida Gator. I'll recognize her for 5 minutes of questioning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today as we examine the many dangers that exist in what some have rightly called the Wild West of the internet. Today's hearing, the World Wide Web, examining harms online, could not be more timely. From exploitation to manipulation, we know that the internet has become a breeding ground for serious threats, especially to those most vulnerable, our kids. I want to begin by personally apologizing to the parents and the guests here in the committee room today for the behavior of some of my colleagues. We are here to focus on kids and the issue at hand, not play liberal catchphrase, talk about food prices, or talk about billionaires. Anything that deviates from that is politically motivated, and it is disgusting. And I am so sorry that you are in this room championing this issue because you have had an experienced tragedy in your family. I am so very sorry. And I hope that my colleagues will apologize. For me personally, I want to focus on the most disturbing and deeply personal harms facing some people online. I don't want to talk about employment status from a former commissioner. I want to talk about the kids that are facing these tragedies. So I'm going to start with you, Ms. Hawkins. Online platforms are fueling the wildfire spread of non-consensual intimate images, including the AI-generated deepfakes, which have been talked about here today. There is zero accountability. Do you believe that Congress should hold these platforms liable, and I'm using the word liable deliberately, when they knowingly allow this kind of harmful content to stay up? And what kind of enforcement tools do we have in our toolbox? Because there is, in fact, more than one. So for the record, would you please describe?
I'll say that if we upload a clip from Disney, a Disney movie, it's removed immediately by big tech. But if sexual abuse is uploaded, the most horrific moments in our lives are uploaded to the internet, it's monetized, and it garners thousands of views and downloads and shares. There's so much that we can do, but as long as tech has no incentive to listen to survivors, to remove this material, we will see no change. The Take It Down Act would do that significantly, but so too would sunsetting CDA 230. This committee almost called for that last year. The problem right now is tech is not coming to the table. We must have them at the table to negotiate and figure out the right solution.
I agree with you, and I'm disappointed to hear that all of a sudden one side is against big tech when all along this has been a bipartisan issue. We have seen conservatives censored online. We have seen progressive voices censored online. There has been a collective call for reform with the big tech companies, and this is another example where we can come together in a bipartisan way, in this case, to protect our kids, especially online. And beyond the FTC, because there seems to be a lot of focus on former Commissioner Slaughter's employment status, can you talk about the FTC, but also the partners in order to enforce how we go about holding the companies accountable, taking the content down? How do we help give our survivors and the victims resources?
I'm not an expert on the FTC, but from what I understand, and I've seen, is we don't have the laws on the books right now for us to protect children online. It's not strong enough. Congress must act. Right now, we need, there's so much to say to that. One thing I want to transition and explain too is the app stores. Right now, that's the gateway. Almost all of our youth, the content that they're consuming is through the app stores. We can see such significant progress if we just make them accountable and provide parental opportunities.
Absolutely, and I think there is a coalition of apps that are working on this and other issues in the periphery, which will be very beneficial. I want to jump to the state laws that are currently on the books, and we know that as every state continues to add the laws, it becomes this patchwork deal where Congress will be forced to act, and we do need to act, and I agree with the chairman that yes, we will take action, and we are willing to go it alone if need be, because this is the right thing to do for parents, for families, and for kids. But almost every state currently has laws on the books today that protect people from non-consensual imagery. But 20 states are now only covering deepfake specifically. Now, given that, talk about at what point is the tipping point for Congress to step in?
Mm-hmm. The reality is that those laws largely only focus on the initial creation and upload of the material. And what we know is immediately once this material is uploaded, again, thousands of views, maybe within hours, countless downloads. And it's quite inefficient. Congress brings efficiency here, and we need more, energy, and we need a solution that holds the tech companies that forces them to listen to us when this is happening to us.
Well, and I know my time has expired, so I will yield, but I also say thank you for being here in the face of threats to stand up for kids and for families. Thank you.
Thank you. We all thank you. All right, next we have let's see, who's next on the Democrat side? Ms. Dingell, there she is. Okay, Ms. Dingell, you're recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by saying thank you to all of the witnesses who I have worked with for a long time before I ever got to Congress. And like all of my colleagues, both sides of the aisle, we are horrified by the fact that there were death threats. I do not like the normalizing of violence or bullying or anything we're seeing, and we're here today because we are fighting that. And when I look at the parents, you need to know people on both sides care deeply. That's why we've been trying for years to get legislation through. I have sat with parents. My own sister died of suicide. I understand that pain. And there isn't a member in this room that doesn't care about you. And I want to make that really clear. And what we really want to do is actually get something done. And I need to say that. I'm proud to co-lead the bipartisan bicameral Take It Down Act, which recently passed the Senate unanimously and, for the record, was included in the end of the year budget bill before it got killed. I won't say who it was because I won't make it partisan, but we got to work together because we know this has to get done. And my colleagues here have brought up the firing of these two commissioners because it happened because he didn't like them, and we got to be clear here. The FTC is an independent agency, and what happened is blatantly unconstitutional, And independent agencies are intended to be insulated from political motivations. And this is the organization that's supposed to be keeping us safe. Without a functioning FTC, how can we expect to enforce the Take It Down Act if it becomes law? And I'm asking every colleague on the other side of the aisle to pledge to work to get this done. Please, we got to stop the politics. We got to get it done. How do we go after bad actors, protect consumers, and hold platforms accountable? The simple answer is we cannot. Gutting the FTC means gutting our ability to protect kids and women online. And as artificial technology advances, so do new forms of abuse. Primarily, who do they target? Women and children. Deep fake pornography is being used as a tool for harassment, humiliation, and intimidation, particularly against women who speak out and advocate for themselves or for children. That's what happened to you all today, and not a member at this dais thinks that that is okay. I want to make that really, really clear. The Take It Down Act provides victims with a path to justice, ensures these images are removed, and holds perpetrators accountable. I want to work with all stakeholders to pass the strongest bill possible and get this bill across the finish line, and I'm begging my colleagues to help me do this. If we succeed in passing this important legislation, we got to make sure that we've got a body that's going to enforce it so that we don't have women unprotected against this growing threat. One of our most important jobs in Congress is to protect people, including from the growing harms online. And I'll tell you, it's only getting worse. It's just getting worse by the day. So, Commissioner Slaughter, let me ask you this question. Without a fully independent, functional FTC, do you believe the agency's current authority is sufficient to effectively enforce the Takedown Act and hold platforms accountable, or do we need to take additional action to strengthen potential enforcement capabilities?
Thank you. Look, I would also like to not be here talking about my employment status. I would like to be here talking about this important work that the FTC has been doing and will be doing in the future to address these critically important issues for American families. For parents across the country, cyberbullying doesn't distinguish between Republicans and Democrats, blue states and red states. This is something that affects all of us, and that I agree we all need to be working together on. With respect to specific legislation, I think an important role at the FTC has been to take the laws that Congress has passed, to faithfully administer them, and then to go back to Congress if we think something needs to be improved or leaves gaps. And I think we've had some of those conversations around privacy generally. We've had those conversations around COPPA. If Congress passes COSA, if Congress passes Take It Down, you certainly have my commitment to faithfully administer those laws and let you know if there is more that the FTC needs.
Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time. Let's just pledge to work with each other and get these bills done.
And these children's memories, these beautiful children here, the pictures of these beautiful children. Thank you very much for coming, and you are going to make a difference, and we are going to work together to get this done. Okay, next we have Mr. James, my good friend from the state of Michigan. You're recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not a partisan issue. This is something that we should be able to work together and get done. I have 3 young boys. John's 11, Hudson is 10 in 2 days, and Christian is 6. And my 6-year-old, when wanting to watch cartoons, saw something nice up on TV, a cartoon, innocent, and he was able, through the App Store, on our television, to buy Max, HBO, Cinemax, Showtime. And he was able to gain access through that just in a portal. It's vital to make sure that we hold our virtual stores to the same standards that we hold our physical stores when it comes to material that is adult or addictive. And that is why I'm leading on this App Store bill that makes sure that we continue behind states that are taking the first step by making sure that we have a National Accountability Act that harmonizes the effectiveness of giving parents the tools to take care of their children. The lack of guardrails in the digital app stores defies logic and puts children at risk. There is simply no good reason why app stores should be allowed to circumvent the same lawful ID checks that brick-and-mortar stores abide to protect children from accessing age-restricted items such as, again, alcohol and tobacco. In other words, we don't rely on Marlboro or Budweiser to ensure kids aren't purchasing their products. We look at CVS, we look at 7-Eleven, we look at the supermarkets to age gate. The app ecosystem should be no different than what is currently established in the United States of America. These app stores are out of touch, and they need to come to reality. This is not a partisan issue, as I said before. This is common sense policy across party lines. It is also what parents want. It's what parents are demanding. Parents like us. We've seen similar legislation gaining steam and picking up momentum around the country. Other states, Alabama, Kentucky, New Mexico, Alaska, and other states. This issue is far too important not to get this bill signed into law in this Congress. It's critical that we get this done, we get it right. My first question is for Ms. Hawkins. Clearly, the status quo is not working. And the current policy framework around these digital app stores is failing to protect our children. What loopholes does this bill rectify in our current law? And can you elaborate on why this bill, in your opinion, is built to withstand a legal challenge given the focus on contracts, terms of service?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Congressman James. Right now, our children are signing contracts, complex terms of service agreements with apps individually every time they download it. These contracts allow access to their contact list, to their camera, to their photos, to their exact location. And parents often have no idea at all. There's no other place in American law where kids are allowed to sign contracts and broker into these really intense agreements. So that's one loophole. Another, though, is the age ratings. Parents think that they have given permission to their kids to get access to apps that are appropriate for their age. And the entire parental control system on both iOS and Google devices is based on these ages. That Google and Apple have said, yes, these are right. But we're finding there's the nonpartisan organization's HEAT initiative and Parents Together. They just released a report where 200 apps had harmful content. Our organization has found hundreds going back every year for 5 years that are rated for 4-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 12-year-olds. And it has sexually explicit content and allows strangers to communicate directly. It gives access to location. The list goes on. Unless there's accurate age ratings, we as parents can't make the decisions about whether this is appropriate content or material for our kids. And the entire system for safety doesn't even work.
Thank you, Madam. Ms. Slaughter, when were you sworn in?
I was originally sworn in on May 2nd, 2018.
May 2nd, 2018, and you were chairman of the FTC for a small period of time, were you not?
I was the acting chair from January to June of 2021.
Acting chair of June 2021. I'd ask my colleagues, but I'm running low on time. Do you recall who was in the majority in Congress during that time period?
I believe the Democrats were...
Democrats were majority in Congress. Do you remember who the president was at that time?
It was Joe Biden.
It was Joe Biden. Joe Biden's approval rate was 57%, yet since 2018 and 2022, 33 kids younger than 13 have died as a result of challenges on TikTok. Democrats are furious, they're incensed, they're outraged over these firings. But Republicans are outraged by dead babies and child porn. You ever think that maybe you might not have been as good at your job as you thought you were? Do you think that maybe something should change? My colleagues on the left are continuously saying, and I believe you said, we need to empower the government agencies. Well, what we are here to do is empower the parents, because when you empower parents, you give children a chance, and we need to try something different than what has failed over the past 7 years. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back, and now I'll recognize Ms. Kelly. I believe Ms. Kelly is here.
Yeah,
No?
it's me.
She's not here. Okay.
I'm right here.
Oh, you're right here. I recognize you for
Thank
your
you.
5 minutes of questioning.
First of all, I want to thank the witnesses and your detailed answers. I really, really appreciate it. And I want to thank the parents. I know you came to my office and we've spoken before, but I am compelled to say I don't need a person here to apologize for me. I'm proud of how I carry myself. I'm proud of what I do. I'm proud that I'm on the bills that you guys have talked about. I am an ally. And also, I have 3 grandchildren, and I care about all kids. I used to work in a child abuse place. I don't need anybody saying we care more about someone's job than we care about kids. That is very insulting, very insulting. Ms. Slaughter, I'm going to respect you and not talk about how you don't have your job, but I want you to talk about why ideologies and differences make a difference, even though it sounds like you guys work together in so many ways, in a bipartisan way.
Sure, thank you. I think it is incredibly valuable for Congress, for the public, and most importantly, for the people that we serve, for the FTC to function as Congress designed, as a multi-member agency with bipartisan representation, with commissioners who serve staggered terms over years, so that we can work with each other, learn from each other, build towards consensus where it's available, and respectfully disagree with each other where that consensus can't be found. Those respectful disagreements provide transparency and accountability to the public, to advocates, to parents, to hear about what else Congress could be doing, what else the FTC could be doing. So I'll talk about a couple of important cases. When I was a minority commissioner originally, the FTC had a landmark case against Facebook, a $5 billion settlement of a privacy violation involving how they dealt with data, including kids' data. I dissented from that settlement because even though the majority at the time thought that $5 billion was a lot of money, I thought it wasn't enough to be effectively deterrent for that company. Sharing that disagreement publicly helps inform Congress and the American public about the work of the agency. I'll give you another example related to kids. Another settlement I dissented from was the FTC's settlement with Google and YouTube over child-directed content on YouTube in violation of COPPA. I actually thought the case was good, the claims were good. I didn't think the settlement got it done because it allowed bad actors to illegally claim that their content was not child-directed, and they just had to be trusted about that. And all of us who are concerned about the content our children access online and think we are trying to protect them by using age gates or using child-directed limitations are imperiled if those limitations don't actually work and that bad actors can work around them, as we've heard some of these other witnesses talking about today.
Thank you. Also, we've talked mostly about young children, but also there are seniors and other vulnerable populations, and of course, young children also. And I plan to we introduced my Protecting Seniors from Emergency Scams Act, which will help help older adults identify scams. And I hear you about the children, because I look at my grandson and some of the times I've said, what is this? But the only thing is he does ask. His mother has, I think, scared him to death if he does it. So he does ask first. But I have seen some interesting things on his phone. Can you talk about the malicious actors and, if the FTC is significantly weakened because of fired commissioners and people not being there?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty clear that corporate lawbreakers are in it to make money, right? They do these things because they are profitable. Some of the things we've heard about today are done for even more malign reasons, but ultimately companies facilitate this lawbreaking because it is profitable to them to do so. And so our job is to ensure that our focus is on the law that Congress passed, in administering those laws without fear or favor, and not being cowed by corporate power or corporate profits, but instead keeping our focus on the people that we serve. And the independence of the FTC protects it from that kind of political or partisan interference that would inhibit the ability to hold corporate lawbreakers accountable.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service, and good luck. And thanks to all the witnesses again. You were really great. And thank you to the parents for being here. We will get this done.
And the lady yields back. Now I'll recognize Mr. Vance for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses for being here today. In preparation for this hearing, I looked at the title. It said the World Wide Web Examining Online Harms. And of course, I'm totally supportive of the fact that we are prioritizing kids, but I decided I would go back and take a quick look at just how much online time people were spending. So I'm sure that all of you are aware of the fact that Americans now spend 7 hours and 3 minutes a day, each one of us apparently online. Excuse me, we also, I looked at the ages. I see here from 0 to 8, 2.5 hours, from 8 to 10 years old, 6 hours, 11 to 14, 9 hours, 15 to 18, 7.5 hours a day. So when we talk about what we're going to do about this problem, boy, is it a big problem. It's a huge, almost insurmountable problem. And as I watch my kids and others, I note the diminishment of critical thinking, the diminishment of skills, the diminishment of self-sufficiency. There's no lack of problems created online. But I'm happy today that we're talking about children. I think that's obviously what we need to be doing. Ms. Morell, your attorneys must have looked at this bill. Is it going to pass free speech scrutiny?
Could you specify which bill?
When I say that bill, I mean the Protect Our Kids bill.
The Protect Our Kids bill?
Yeah, the one we've been talking about the entire time today.
Oh, take it down or?
Take it down.
Oh, take it down.
Yeah, take it down, forgive me.
To pass free speech concerns, I believe it would. This is just trying to say that platforms, because in Section 230, there's a Good Samaritan provision that incentivizes platforms and said you will be protected from liability for removing content that is obscene, lewd, lascivious, otherwise objectionable. But there has been no accompanying stick to that carrot. And what Take It Down would say is that platforms cannot host content if they are contacted knowingly that is non-consensual imagery, and they need to remove that. And so I think that is well within the authority of the government to do that.
So in anticipation of this hearing, I went and of course researched the Take It Down bill and looked at some of the critical comments on it. It appears that there are questions that have been raised by various commentators about it, and I think we heard Congressman Obernolte reference the fact that it's not a perfect bill. We want this bill to survive. So I hope you've reached out and whatever suggestions you have or anybody on the panel that we should change this bill, please tell us. Because in looking at the history of everyone trying to get this done, obviously First Amendment issues are going to come up. Why I'm asking you questions, your testimony touches on the limits of some content filtering tools available. I take it these things are not effective. Tell me why.
Yes, so content filters have not been effective in the smartphone app-based ecosystem because often filters do not have access to the material inside of apps. And so pornography today is not restricted to pornography websites, it's on social media itself. And as I mentioned in my opening, often social media is the first entry point for kids, and they're not meaning to access it, but they stumble upon a link and they click on it, and because there's no age gating on these porn sites, they're immediately able to get through to Pornhub. And so the filters are not working. It's very difficult. They often don't filter the in-app browsers, that each individual application actually has its own portal to the internet. And so it's been an incredibly difficult problem for parents on their own. And so that's why I've been supportive of solutions like age verification that would actually require the porn sites to verify this person is an adult before letting a child through, because filters are just not working for parents. And the technology has changed over the last 20 years that has made it extremely difficult for filters to work.
I want to move back to a much more difficult issue, that's Section 230. So I was on Judiciary until I had the good fortune of being selected for this particular committee. And I must say, in the days and weeks I spent studying Section 230, it appeared to me hugely challenging to change it. Do you have some suggestions on how we might actually do that?
A couple quick suggestions. I would say one critical thing would just be to clarify that Section 230 does not apply to product design, to the company's own wrongdoing or their own algorithms as their product. I think that has been an issue that we've seen of lawsuits getting thrown out in court claiming Section 230 immunity when it was not the speech the platform was hosting of third parties, but it was actually the product design of those platforms, algorithms connecting sex traffickers to their victims or promoting blackout challenges into the feed of a 10-year-old girl who then took her life by accident. And so I think it's really important to clarify Section 230 was not meant to cover product design. I would also say a bad Samaritan carve-out to say that if you are knowingly hosting criminal content or criminal behavior on your website, you do not get to hide behind Section 230's immunity. To accompany the Good Samaritan provision, we need a kind of commensurate bad Samaritan carve-out for knowingly hosting criminal material.
Thank you. Yield back.
Very much, and thank you for making those suggestions. If we have any constitutional concerns, we want to make sure that we fix them now, because ultimately we got to get this through, so to protect our kids. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And next, we're going to ask Ms. Clark. She has 5 minutes for questioning. You're recognized.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and thank you to our witnesses for being here to testify, and to Commissioner Bedoya, who is also in attendance. Thank you for your hard work and dedication to the people of the United States. I find it disingenuous to convene this hearing on protecting children from online harms while Donald Trump dismantles the very agency that Congress created to protect consumers, including children. Having said that, where there is a will, there is a way. And we have to determine whether, in fact, there is a will. For decades, the FTC has provided clarity for businesses and consumers protecting the American public from deceptive or unfair practices and unfair methods of competition. President Trump's attempted illegal firing of the Democratic FTC commissioners is a continuation of the administration's anti-consumer agenda that promotes scams, deceptive practices, and costs Americans lives and money. I'm curious how Mr. Trump and my Republican colleagues think this unlawful attempt furthers the mission of the FTC to protect the public from deceptive or unfair business practices and from unfair methods of competition through law enforcement, advocacy, research, and education. It's also no coincidence that the Trump's Project 2025 went as far as to question if the FTC should, quote, continue to exist, end quote. So having said that, with the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence, consumers are faced with the increasingly acute potential harms of algorithmic discrimination. Facial recognition technology is a clear example of a tool powered by AI that, time and time again, has been prone to unjustified bias, particularly against members of communities of color. In 2023, the FTC took action against Rite Aid to address the company's harmful misuse of biased AI tools. And for years, hundreds of Rite Aid stores used facial recognition technology to identify consumers it deemed likely to engage in shoplifting and alert store employees to their presence. According to the FTC, employees acting on false positive alerts followed consumers around in its stores, searched them, ordered them to leave, called the police to confront or remove consumers, and publicly accused them, sometimes in front of friends and family, of shoplifting and other wrongdoing. Also, according to the FTC, Rite Aid's actions disproportionately impacted people of color. It is nothing new that AI can often prove inaccurate and fail to properly identify people, especially when it comes to race, age, or gender. Rite Aid not only failed its customers by refusing to notify patrons of the use of biometric surveillance, but they also failed to test its own program for accuracy before deploying it. The role the FTC played in holding Rite Aid accountable cannot be overlooked. This is just an example. And we must acknowledge the importance of a bipartisan FTC in properly protecting consumers. Without a bipartisan FTC, consumers will lose their advocate to obtain recourse when they've been taken advantage of by scammers. So, Commissioner Slaughter, what concerns do you have about the FTC's ability to address harmful discriminatory behavior moving forward without consultation from the Democratic commissioners?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I'm very concerned about the FTC's ability to execute all of its mission, including the important parts of our mission that address new emerging technologies and how they're deployed in the marketplace. The law requires that deployment be free of unfair or deceptive acts and practices. And we need to be able to have robust bipartisan conversations about how those laws are being executed. You mentioned the Rite Aid case, that's an important one. Another important one is the SNAP case, where AI chatbots, actually can't get into the specific details of the case because the fact of it was made public, but not the details. But it was a case where the FTC referred very serious concerns about the use of AI chatbots to the Department of Justice. And there is bipartisan debate and also bipartisan agreement about these issues. That debate makes us stronger, it makes the work better, it makes it more durable. And I think that that's true whether I serve in the minority or in the majority. It's the fact of having a diverse set of viewpoints to inform the work of the FTC that allows that work to be both effective and durable.
And let me thank you for all of your hard work and dedication. To the parents in the room, your loss is not lost on us. And I have been battling in this committee for many years around the fact that we have allowed no guardrails to be placed around the technologies that our children are being exposed to. I understand that my time has been finished,
time's
but I
expired.
did want to say to you, where there is a will,
Gentlelady's time's
there is a
expired.
way, and we will get there.
Gentlelady's time
Thank
is
you.
expired.
I yield back.
The chair recognizes Representative from Indiana, Representative Houchin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank Chairman Guthrie, Subcommittee Chair Bilirakis, and all the staff who worked hard to make this hearing possible. I especially want to thank the witnesses for being here today and apologize to you for what you've had to go through in the last several hours. It is unfair and disappointing. While I'm new to this committee, I am not new to these issues. I am a parent of 2 daughters who are now young adults and a son who's a teenager. And they have grown up surrounded by social media and immersed in the digital world. And as a parent, I want to directly respond to Ms. Hawkins. I have experienced everything that you mentioned with, the failures in the protections that are supposed to be in place. Apple devices having confusing parental controls, Roblox claiming that people cannot message your children and access your children when they can, Snap Map, and also YouTube Kids, which my son, when he was very young, I thought was protected because it's YouTube Kids, and he was on the app so long that it turned into something that he shouldn't have seen. We tried everything, every protection possible. We had parental apps like Custodio that are supposed to protect kids from some of these things, but one of the things that happens in these circumstances is even as parents, if we are as vigilant as possible, they can still go to other kids' devices and access these apps, and we cannot monitor them 100% of the time. My daughter found a workaround to stay on her phone. So I am very grateful we're having this hearing today, and I want to make special recognition of the parents that are here in the audience. And I want to apologize to you for the things that are being taken away from this conversation, not being focused on protecting children, but instead on someone's job at the FTC. I think that's completely unfair. I was also stopped in the hallway by a reporter who only wanted to ask me about the FTC. I did not comment because this hearing today is about protecting kids. A follow-up question was asked, and I said, I am not commenting because this hearing today is about protecting kids. And shame on the media if the only thing they cover from today is the FTC, because children are dying, and parents need to hear this information. I'm new to the committee, and at today's hearing, the core is protecting kids. I do want to recognize Mason Bogard. Mason Bogard's memory is with us today. Mason's mother, Joanne, sent me a powerful letter that I want to read a portion of. My 15-year-old son, Mason, was our youngest of 3 children. He enjoyed playing his drums and entertaining his friends and family with his witty humor. He had just started his first job at a landscape business and was excited to start driver's ed. He enjoyed everything about the outdoors, including camping, hiking, and his love of fishing. He liked watching videos online to learn how to make new fishing lures and master his woodworking skills. He was a child of God and knew he was loved by his family and friends. What I want you to know is that Mason was living a healthy and well-balanced lifestyle as a typical teen. Mason is no longer with us as a result of the choking challenge, and I think of Mason every time we discuss these issues. His story stays with me, and so does the challenge coin that his mother gave me, which I keep as a reminder of what we're fighting for. Sadly, Mason's story is not unique. Annalee Schott was exposed to extremely graphic videos and images on platforms like TikTok and Instagram, so graphic that she even witnessed a live suicide being streamed. That experience had a devastating impact on her mental health and ultimately led to her taking her own life in November of 2020. Becca Schmill died at 18 after unknowingly purchasing fentanyl-laced cocaine online. Her mother traces Becca's struggles back to trauma that was facilitated by social media, sexual assault, cyberbullying, and easy-to-access dangerous drugs. Then there's Walker Montgomery. Walker was the victim of a horrific sextortion scheme. He was blackmailed after unknowingly participating in a sexual encounter that was secretly recorded by someone pretending to be someone else. The perpetrators demanded $1,000 or they would release the footage to his friends and family. He tragically took his own life. These are real kids, real families, real tragedies. These are complex issues with legal and regulatory implications, but we should not, it shouldn't be so complex that we don't achieve our shared goal, which is to protect kids. Meeting with parents like Joanne and those who loved Annalee, Becca, and Walker is both heartbreaking and motivating. These families have turned unimaginable grief into a mission to help prevent other tragedies. Every time I meet with them, I'm reminded why this work matters, and I am proud to be a champion for them. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions. I yield back.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Congressman Mullen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here. I want to begin by reiterating that the bills and approaches discussed here today to protect our children online would fall to the FTC to enforce. Congress established the FTC as an independent agency with a clear mandate to protect consumers from unfair, deceptive, and fraudulent practices. For 90 years, the president has not been able to fire an FTC commissioner without just cause. And yet today, we find ourselves a week removed from the attempted unlawful firings of 2 FTC commissioners by the president. Beyond that, the chair of the FTC has gone along with Elon Musk's Doge operation and dismissed a number of FTC employees with probationary status also without cause. I'm having a hard time figuring out why anyone on either side of the aisle would want this. If the FTC is no longer an independent agency and if it no longer has the resources it needs to actually get the work done, then what are we even doing here? I am deeply concerned about a rollback of some of the strong consumer protection work that the FTC has done over the last several years. Much of it was bipartisan, but some of it, particularly some of the work done during the last few months of the Biden administration, was passed on a strictly partisan basis. In order to address a breach of driving location data by a major car company, a referral of a consumer complaint against Snap to the Department of Justice, in order to prevent location-based targeted advertising without user consent, a new click-to-cancel rule that prevents unfair business practices and enables consumers to more easily unsubscribe from recurring charges. Despite the clear benefits to consumers of all of this work, none of these initiatives were supported by the other 2 commissioners who, at least for now, remain in their positions. So, Commissioner Slaughter, as I understand it, you'll be challenging the president's attempts to unlawfully fire you and Commissioner Bedoya as well. While that challenge is underway, will the 2 other commissioners undo all of this progress I cited? How does your attempted firing impact the FTC's legitimacy, authority, and role? And what does that mean for American consumers and businesses?
Thank you. I think at the moment, it's really unclear what happens to any FTC action. As you noted, we haven't been in a position like this in over 90 years. So there's a lot we don't know about what happens. And what concerns me is that throws work, even work that I would agree with, into question. The last thing I voted on before the president tried to fire me was a 4-0 challenge to a medical device merger that would raise the cost of health care even further. There's a lot of things that I agree on with my Republican colleagues, and that's work that is done best on a bipartisan basis. There are also good things that I think the agency has done that they don't support. It has always been clear to me that they might try to undo some of the progress that I think we made in the last administration, and they are entitled to do that as a majority, but they need to get the votes to do that, and they, under the law, need to do that in the face of the transparency and accountability that minority votes would provide, and that is helpful to Congress and to the American public.
And Commissioner, in your prior testimony, you've outlined several examples of the FTC enforcing online safety. Can you expand on the steps taken over the last 4 years to bring more technologists into the agency? How is this expertise being undermined by the administration's actions, and what impact will this have on the FTC's ability to investigate and protect consumers' online safety moving forward, in your opinion?
I think one of our big accomplishments during the last administration was setting up the Office of Technology. The FTC was created by Congress to be a body of independent experts, and we've long relied on the expertise of economists and others. Chair Khan set up an Office of Technology and built it out with really expert technologists who can inform our research work, our casework, and report out to the public about technological trends, and that's enormously valuable. That office is much smaller now than it was even 2 months ago. I couldn't give you the exact numbers, but it is substantially smaller, and I worry that that critically important expertise is being limited by some of the broader cuts we're seeing across the government.
Well, Commissioner, I'd like to thank you for your service, which is not over, and for your continued efforts to protect our children and American consumers. So thank you. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing today. Thank you to the witnesses, to the parents in the room who are here, who have traveled far, the bravery, Ms. Hawkins, of dealing with the stuff that you dealt with yesterday with the death threats. I think that there's no place in this, and I'm going to go off the reservation a little bit here, and that there is a reason why Democrats are viewed by the American people at an all-time low. Is because they can't keep the main thing the main thing. We are here today, to be clear, 100%. Everyone knew the assignment when we got into this hearing room ahead of time. We are here to talk about children's safety online. And all I hear from the other side is rantings and ravings about the FTC. If you want to talk about the FTC, go do a 1-minute speech on the House floor. You want to talk about the FTC? Have a press conference. Here.
Will the gentleman yield?
No, I'm not. This is my time. Here, we are here to talk about children. But they can't seem to get it. And that's why they're viewed deeply unpopular by the American people right now. And in fact, the witness from the FTC spent 4 of her 5 minutes talking about how she was fired and not the actual subject while we're here. So that's frustrating to me, that there's broad bipartisan consensus on a lot of this stuff. We're here to examine that on ways that we can advance sensible policy. Ms. Hawkins, you talked about somebody from South Carolina, Mr. Guffey, who's a state representative, and his son Gavin, who was involved in a sextortion scheme. And I'm glad that law enforcement is doing something about it now, but that doesn't replace his son. And so what can we do as policymakers up here? There's a lot. Sextortion, AI-generated abuse, and imagery, online platforms turning a blind eye. These are all things that we recognize the danger is real, and it's accelerating what we have now. Ms. Souras, your testimony highlighted an astounding 1,325% increase in AI-generated child sexual abuse material. What are the challenges of law enforcement in identifying those under the current scheme, identifying and distinguishing AI-generated images from real victims?
Thank you for the question. That is a challenge both for NCMEC, that has a child victim identification program that works closely with law enforcement, and obviously all law enforcement agencies that are, when they see an image of the sexual abuse of a child, they often do not know where that child is. They need to identify that child, they need to locate that child. There's a lot of work that goes into that. Now that we have AI-generated imagery, and I'm told by the analysts at NCMEC that the technology is so good now that it is very, very difficult to distinguish. It was easier 6 months ago, a year ago, but now it is very difficult to distinguish between an image that is AI generated of a child being sexually abused and an actual image of a child being sexually abused. So what we have is a flood of imagery, some that is, I'll call it fake, but it's a digital forgery, and some that is a real child who might be in an actively abusive situation. And law enforcement, and again, and NCMEC in our support role, have to somehow decipher which are the real children. So we face the real danger that somebody will spend time trying to identify a child who simply does not exist. It is an AI-generated child, while a real child currently in an abusive situation waits in the queue.
You think legislation could properly address that challenge that we have?
I think it could, again, if we look especially upstream so that we can prevent this technology from even being allowed to create that imagery to begin with.
Thank you for that. Ms. Morell, you know tech companies knowingly design addictive platforms and evade meaningful age verification. Your testimony talked about that. In your view, what specific legal requirements beyond just parental controls should Congress evaluate to stop the cycle of exposure and exploitation?
Yeah, so I will say I'm on the extreme end. I would kind of plant my flag in the ground on saying I think Congress should seriously consider that the environment and the underlying design of social media is so harmful to children, it should actually be age restricted out of childhood. The default age for social media has been 13, but not because of a specific law related to social media, but because of COPPA passed in 1996. Before social media even existed, about data collection. And so I think we really need an updated legal regime that really tries to delay social media as far as possible, because if you talk to parents, almost every parent says, I wish that my child wasn't on social media, but I feel compelled to let them on these apps because every one of their friends is on it. And that, to me, is a classic collective action problem that the government has a very critical role to play in solving, where then each individual parent doesn't have to face that battle on their own. We can say, like alcohol or tobacco, or even operating firearms or driving cars, technologies we've recognized are just too powerful for a child to handle. I think we're seeing that in the way social media has even changed over time, how aggressive the algorithms are, that the entire nature and environment it creates and the underlying design is not a place for children.
Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, before I yield, I want to enter 3 articles into the record about Mr. Guffey and his fight from various periodicals in South Carolina. Thank you so much.
Okay, the gentleman yields back. Ms. Schreier, Dr. Schreier, you're recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. Thank you for the parents for being here today, and special thank you to Commissioners Bedoya and Slaughter for being here today. Also, thanks, Mr. Fry, for lecturing a pediatrician about caring for children, but not for your leadership in blocking our bill that protects children. Amen, Ms. Morell. I have a 16-year-old, and he is forbidden from downloading any social media on his phone. So we are here today to talk about online safety for children. It's an issue I care deeply about, that I've been working on for years. And as a pediatrician, I have seen the negative effects that unfettered screen time and social media has had on children. In fact, I witnessed in my own practice the steep rise in depression and anxiety and eating disorders that absolutely paralleled the rise in social media use by kids. I even had a patient who had to change school districts twice because of online bullying, and it followed her. So this is one reason I've been such a champion for cracking down on the way social media companies abuse children, like privacy violations, algorithms that keep them addicted, and a lack of protection from abuse by others. And it's the reason that I'm particularly frustrated that Republican leadership blocked the Kids Online Safety Act from even coming to the floor for a bipartisan vote. But there's an elephant in the room. As we've heard today, President Trump has fired the only 2 Democratic commissioners at the FTC. These firings upend nearly a century of precedent through this illegal attempt to fire them. Commissioners Slaughter and Bedoya have championed and enforced the protection of children on social media platforms. And this is the commission that holds big tech accountable. It's also the commission that protected consumers last year by preventing the merger between Kroger and Albertsons, which would have jacked up prices in the grocery stores even more. So the FTC is one of the most important independent agencies in our government, and an agency that was commissioned by Congress to be independent, bipartisan, and with terms spanning administrations. But I fear that without 2 Democratic commissioners, a partisan FTC might withdraw from its mission in this political environment with an emboldened executive branch that has been quite successful in bending Republicans to his will. This administration has clearly aligned itself with big tech, front row seats at the inauguration, but rather than with the American consumer. So, Commissioner Slaughter, I am nearly last to speak today, and I just want to give you, first of all, thanks for enforcing our laws. But second, I'd like to just give you the platform for the next 2 minutes to talk about anything you would like that you either want to reiterate or have not had time to address today.
Thank you. I feel like I've had a lot of opportunity to share my perspective, but I think the most important thing that I haven't had a chance to say is it really is not about me or about Commissioner Bedoya. We love our agency, we love our jobs, we want to do it, but I could be very happy spending time with my 4 kids and trying to police their social media use unsuccessfully more. But what I care about and what Commissioner Bedoya cares about is the integrity of the work of the agency, precisely because of the people who are sitting in this room today. I feel he feels very, very driven to make sure that government and the institutions that Congress has designed are working for parents like those behind us and for every other parent so they don't have to be in that position going forward. It is so important. It's not about being a Democrat. It's not about being in the minority. It would be true throughout the commission's history. I think it's important to have a variety of voices and a variety of perspectives as Congress designed, precisely because these issues that the FTC is tasked with handling are so important to the American people. And I care incredibly deeply about them, and I want that work to continue. I've heard so much common ground with my fellow witnesses today, and so much shared concern that I have with them about the way technology today is operating outside the bounds of what the law is and also what the law should be. And we want to make sure that the focus of the agency is on protecting those kids and protecting those families.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to our witnesses, to the parents here today, and that is the whole point, to offer our condolences and make sure this does not happen to any other child or parent. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Now we'll recognize Ms. Laurel Lee for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this important hearing. And I also express my gratitude to each of our witnesses for being here today and sharing your important testimony with us. So during the last Congress, I had an opportunity to work on legislation related to protecting children, most notably the Report Act, and was fortunate to partner with a number of the groups that are represented here today in crafting that policy. And I look forward to continuing our work together on protecting kids online here in this committee. As our committee explores legislation such as COPPA, we face the task of ensuring that we are making the right decisions and keeping our children safe. Your input and your testimony, as you've heard today, is so valuable to us drafting legislation and getting it right. Ms. Morell, as you noted, I thank you for being here and for sharing your expertise and your thoughtful insight about these challenges. And as you noted, it has been many years since Congress enacted privacy protections for children online. And in those years, technology has evolved and outpaced the protections that we have currently in place. I am eager to work on COPPA with Representative Castor and Wahlberg to improve protections for minors in a way that is in keeping with the threats we face in the 21st century. Now, one thing I want to touch on specifically is the targeted ads. So as they relate to adults, those can sometimes be helpful in retail and other applications. They can sometimes be something that is a benefit to the consumer. But for targeted ads as they relate to children and young people, will you explain to us why that practice in particular is harmful?
Yes, it's extremely harmful because children don't have the maturity that an adult has to be able to make decisions for themselves and to discern truth from false claims. And so I think it's really dangerous that these businesses are allowed to target ads to children in ways that then they feel compelled then that they should buy this product, and they're not discerning. And so I think it's a really predatory practice.
And on that note, in your testimony, you identify how big tech continues to recruit younger and younger users to their platforms. And you were just speaking with Representative Fry about your view that we really ought to just restrict access to these platforms to a higher age. Tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on that subject.
Yes, so I think that the nature of social media today is not a safe place for children. I feel like example after example has shown that the environment created by the product design, the way that their algorithms work, the kinds of material it promotes, which is often the most sensational or violent or explicit material is what gets promoted into children's feed, have made it an extremely unsafe place, as well as the metrics are designed to incentivize children to even post sexual images of themselves. And it has normalized a lot of the practices that we're talking about. Why are teens creating deep fake pornography? Because the environment and nature of the online world is extremely sexualized and violent. And so it is not a safe place for children. And I've said this before, but the same way that in the real world, we don't take children to bars or strip clubs and then try to blindfold them there. We just don't take them to those places. And I think social media has gotten to that point today that unless the business model vastly changes, it is not a safe environment for children, nor is it a safe substance, because as we've seen, brain studies show it acts on the brain like highly addictive drugs. And so for both those reasons, I think the precedent in our laws tell us to age restrict it out of childhood.
And Ms. Hawkins, one of the things that you have emphasized is the vulnerability of young teens who are not protected after the age of 13 under our current scheme. Would you like to speak on this as well and how you think that should change?
Thank you. Well, one of the problems with COPPA originally passed is that it set the digital age, inadvertently set the digital age of adulthood at 13. And even though it was focused on privacy, big tech has just run away with this idea, and they've literally, one time I met with Google 10 years ago, I walked out of the meeting with Google, and we were talking about, filters for 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and they said, why would we want to block pornography from a 14-year-old? They're adults at that age. And that is when I realized the impact of creating this digital adulthood age. And I just asked, there's so much good in COPPA 2.0. There's so much good, and we need it. But I also ask that we not further cement this idea that we're digital adults at that age and that parents are not needed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. I thank the gentlelady. Now we have Mr. Vesey. You're recognized, sir, for your 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. I think that we've learned a lot today that blocking bills like COPPA and other things that protect our kids is bad, and that we shouldn't be doing that. And so I appreciate your comments today and you sharing some of those things. I also wanted to talk very briefly about the attempted removal of 2 minority commissioners from the FTC and how I think that that is really bad for the things that we're trying to accomplish here today to protect our children and other consumers, as this agency has a very long history of doing. It's unconstitutional, it's wrong, and that is the type of thing that could really further wreck our kids and our teenagers' lives. And that's not what we want. I think that that's the one thing that we've heard from the panel is that we don't want things that are going to make it harder for our young people. We want to protect them, and we can't do that if we're going to try to undermine the Constitution. Commissioner Slaughter, I wanted to ask you, you have a very strong record for advocating for consumer protections with ongoing supply chain disruptions and shifting tariff policies. I really worry that unfair and deceptive business practices are going to be on the horizon. How does President Trump's attempt to remove you and the other commissioner from the minority impact the Federal Trade Commission's ability to hold corporations and people that want to hurt our kids and other consumers through things like price gouging accountable?
Thank you. Congress designed the FTC over 100 years ago, 111 years ago, and set it up to be a bipartisan agency made up of members from both parties who serve staggered terms because Congress understood that that was a really important way to insulate the work of the FTC from corrupting influences, from partisanship, and from political interference. Over the time I've served at the FTC, our staff have gone up against some of the most powerful companies in court. They've done that supported by commissioners from both parties because we understand that our obligation is to enforce the law without fear or favor. That is based in the design of the FTC that Congress set up. And I'm very concerned that my attempted removal not only eliminates the bipartisan voices that Congress intended, but it also sends a message to the majority commissioners that they too could be removed at a whim if they're not willing to take action that may be a favor to some of these big companies, the most powerful companies in the world. And that's really concerning if what we all want, I think, is for the focus of the administration of the law to be on the American people, the children, the consumers, the workers, and honest businesses.
That's scary because that's almost the type of thing that you hear of in a communist country. Commissioner Slaughter, also, I know as the nation's top privacy enforcer that you guys want to protect Americans' data, their personal data. And data, again, that could be kid, and I think everybody on this panel seems to express an interest in helping kids especially, and that kids can have data, all of us can. And I wanted to ask you, with data breaches on the rise and targeted advertisements constantly testing the limits of consumer privacy, how does your attempted removal and the other commissioners' attempted removal weaken the FTC's ability to protect users online? And do you see this as part of a broader effort to undermine the agency's independence?
Yeah, I'm very worried about it. The FTC has conducted a study on social media and video streaming services, data collection and use practices. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. It started under the first Trump administration. It was the product of a bipartisan effort by myself, former Commissioner Wilson, former Commissioner Chopra. We finally released the report last year, and what I didn't get a chance to say is that report talks not only about the way data is collected, but also how it's used. We've heard a little bit about some of the really disturbing challenges that kids are set up with online. We heard about the choking challenge. There's been the Tide Pod challenge. The report that we issued talked about the ways in which companies use data to fuel engagement and interest, including around things like this that create real material harms for kids that cannot be undone. Yeah. Once it happens, it's too late. Yep. So our job, as all of the parents in this audience know, is to get ahead of those problems, to send clear signals to the market on a bipartisan basis about what conduct is prohibited by the law and how companies bear the burden of following the law, and that needs to be done without fear or favor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it. Thank the gentleman for yielding back. And now we'll recognize Mr. Kane from the great state of New Jersey. You're recognized for 5 minutes of questioning, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today. Last Congress, following a horrific deepfake incident at a high school in my district, I made AI safety a priority. I led efforts on the AI Labeling Act. I co-led the Preventing Deepfakes of Intimate Images Act, and I'm co-sponsoring the Take It Down Act. We must ensure proper oversight, holding bad actors accountable, and fostering responsibility among AI companies and users. While AI safeguards remain critically important, another focus now is expanding towards data privacy concerns, particularly on how we protect Americans, especially children, from online exploitation and data misuse. As Congress considers federal data privacy standards, today's discussions will help us understand the challenges families face and the most effective ways to ensure stronger protections moving forward. Ms. Souras, what legal and technological challenges exist in preventing the spread of malicious deepfake pornography, and what role does Congress play in strengthening protections for victims while holding perpetrators accountable?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. Let me address the technical challenges first. I think there is a rush to market. We are a country of innovation. We saw this when the internet first arose. We're seeing this with AI now. There is tremendous competition and pressure to rush products to market without safety by design, without consideration of how children will interact with these tools and how offenders will misuse these tools. So that is, I think, the primary challenge. There also is really, again, a lack of safety by design. We've heard that term, I think, throughout the hearing today. It's embedded in several pending bills that I think will be addressed this term. But it's really the concept of requiring companies, before they roll out a new service, a new platform, a new product, to really consider the dangers to children. Again, the misuse by offenders, and how a child might interact with a new technology, and safeguard those children. I think the final issue is, again, looking to the upstream. We need to look upstream on technology in terms of AI producers and AI developers. We need to help those producers that want to create a safe product. We need to consider red teaming so they actually have the ability to test that AI and make sure it's not available or able to produce child sexual exploitation material. That's a complicated partnership that needs to occur to achieve that. But we need to, again, look upstream and prevent this imagery from being created in the first place, rather than focusing only on criminal or civil remedies down the road. If I can, just to address the legal challenges as well. So I don't really think there's unclear liability around AI companies. I think it is clear that they are not protected by Section 230. I do think there's a lack of clarity around civil and criminal remedies. Obviously, Take It Down will address the criminal remedies. There have been some bills pending in the last term, and I expect to see them reintroduced this term as well, that would address the civil penalties. So again, we really need those three avenues to completely protect children from AI.
Thank you. Ms. Hawkins, is there anything you'd like to add on that?
I want to add just that behind me sits the Young People's Alliance, a group of young people, the parents of Matthew and Grace also. And we've walked these halls together asking for Congress to take action. And we joined together again asking once more. We felt outrage when the Kids Online Safety Act, when the Take It Down Act, when so many of these other bills didn't pass last year. And we just come before you asking for Congress to finally take action.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Morell, what are the key obstacles preventing parents from effectively utilizing existing online safety tools? And how can Congress address these gaps without infringing on First Amendment rights?
Yeah, so the current gaps is that the tools made available to parents don't actually allow parents oversight or insight into what's happening on a child's feed or their direct messages, which is where a lot of the sextortion schemes or predators are gaining access to children through these messages that parents have no access to. And the parental supervision tools available are really just to set time limits or certain restrictions on the app, but often those restrictions aren't effective. And also the teen can cancel this supervision at any time. And so it's not really an effective control in that sense. And so what I've argued and advocated for is really age restricting social media out of childhood as an unsafe substance and dangerous environment for children that would empower all parents to be able to protect their kids, including This hasn't really been mentioned, but a lot of children are left unprotected because they don't have involved parents. And I think we need to care for America's children across the board, whether or not they have involved parents putting those controls in place or not. And so that's why I've advocated for solutions that age restricted out of childhood. And the last thing I would say is I think the other way that we hold companies accountable for harms to children is opening up liability against them. And that has largely been blocked because of Section 230. And so COSA and other bills like it would try to actually clarify that companies need to be liable for mitigating objective harms to children in their product design.
Thank you. I yield back.
Appreciate gentleman yields back, and I now recognize Mr. Evans from the great state of Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the ranking member, to the witnesses for coming today, and of course to the families and to the parents who are in the audience. My first question will be to Ms. Souras with NCMEC. I was a cop for a little over 10 years, so I've personally worked these cases that originated with tips from NCMEC. I know the great work that you do, and unfortunately I know the truly terrible and traumatic events that you often have to monitor and then refer out for investigation. Digital alterations, revenge porn, online bullying, AI, deepfake, sextortation. And the list goes on. And I think it's critically important to note how horrible and graphic these crimes are. One of the things that I did in law enforcement was peer support. And so that is police officers taking care of other police officers to safeguard and shepherd the mental health of first responders. And some of the highest levels of trauma that we ever see in law enforcement is the crimes against children investigators, because of just the absolutely brutal and graphic nature of these crimes, and NCMEC and the work that you do is at the front lines of being able to identify and refer out for further investigation in this space. And so my first question to you comes from something that you had mentioned in your written testimony, where you were talking about some of the challenges of online digital security with end-to-end encryption, but how end-to-end encryption also makes it more difficult at times to be able to actually identify this. And so my question to you is, can you speak a little bit about how we can protect online privacy with good encryption, but also make sure that entities like NCMEC have the tools that they need to be able to find, interdict, and refer out for investigation on some of these heinous crimes?
Thank you for the question. So I think when we are talking about end-to-end encryption and child safety, it's a balancing act, right? Like so many other things in our legal system. NCMEC has been very public that we support end-to-end encryption for consumer privacy. Obviously, everybody wants their medical, their legal, their financial information to be protected through strong security measures, end-to-end encrypted, et cetera. We've probably all in this room been hacked previously due to a lack of digital security. However, there has to be a balance regarding child safety, and I feel like this has become a little bit of a choice where you have to pick one at the sacrifice of the other, and we simply don't believe that's the case. So when you are considering child safety considerations, again, those are not financial, medical, legal concerns that adults are engaging in. We're talking about children engaging with adults, with offenders on social media. There are platforms there that simply do not need to be default end-to-end encrypted. Children's accounts do not need to be default end-to-end encrypted. We need to make sure there is visibility and transparency if children are going to be online in those environments, so that a company has the ability to detect, right? This is all about detection. If a company cannot see what is going on, how an offender is approaching a child, what kind of imagery they are soliciting or sending that child, we will never get a report at NCMEC, and law enforcement will never get a report to investigate and safeguard a child. So we support balancing, using the technology that's available to us, excuse me, to protect the digital security that end-to-end encryption provides, while also ensuring that child safety is balanced with that.
Thank you, and kind of a follow-up corollary to that. My home state, Colorado, unfortunately has the distinction of having the second highest number of teenage overdose deaths as a result of illegal drugs being sold. And we know a lot of times those transactions occur through online interactions with kids, with juveniles, through social media or other apps. Can you speak a little bit to how the work that NCMEC has been doing in the child sexual exploitation space, can we use that as a corollary to be able to identify and interdict some of these drug transactions that, again, are taking thousands and thousands of lives around the country? And oftentimes the the operating principle that some of these perpetrators use is very similar. They use coded language. They're trying to evade detection online. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely, and it's a great question and an issue that we've discussed with several other groups and members of Congress as well previously. I think there is a corollary. Our cyber tip line, which is the receiver of reports relating to child sexual exploitation that we evaluate, handle, and then send to law enforcement, is a good model because it relies on detection by technology companies, by online platforms. Again, based on emojis, like you said, based on coded language, based on direct solicitations, that would be very similar for drugs in many ways as it is for CSAM or exploitation of children. Again, having a reporting mechanism that is centralized, again, for drug transactions, would also facilitate determining a jurisdiction, determining where an offender is, where a victim is, and allowing law enforcement to pursue their investigation.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I will recognize Mr. Coleman from the great state of Texas for 5 minutes. Goldman.
Coleman, it all sounds
I
the same.
apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Elliston Berry is a constituent of mine. And those of you who don't know her, she was a victim of deepfake revenge porn. I want to be thankful to her for her bravery, for her coming to the Capitol during the joint address, sitting next to the First Lady of the United States of America. Thankful to the President for recognizing her in the gallery in front of millions of Americans. And it's bravery like hers. It's bravery like yours, coming forward, telling your stories. The reason we're here today is, and I see some of the families out there in the audience, and I see photos. Can you hold those up? This is the reason we're here today. This is the reason we're here today, members. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you for telling your story. This is what we need to hear, because it is about the safety of the children of America. That's the reason we're here. And that is why we have the Take It Down Act. It's why I'm proud to be a co-sponsor, and I look forward to its passage. I don't have any questions for y'all. By the time it gets to me, all the questions pretty much have been asked that I wanted to ask. I just wanted to thank y'all very much for being here, for telling your story, for your bravery, and I look forward to the passage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the rest of my time.
Appreciate that very much. So I believe that's the last presenter. We don't have anyone else, any other members on either side. So I do want to tell you a very productive hearing, and I want to thank Ms. Hawkins in particular, but all of the witnesses today for obvious reasons. But all the witnesses here today, and very informative, and we all agree on the issues, the subject matter of this hearing, and the legislation put forward. And you know that Brett and I, Chairman Guthrie, will make this a priority. The fact that we've had an early educational hearing shows that these bills are very, very important to all of us. I appreciate the audience being here today and all the advocates that are advocating on behalf of our children. We appreciate you all, and let's work together. Like I said before, if there are any concerns with these bills, let's get them done early. And then if they have any issues with the Senate, what have you, let's hash them out early so we can get this on the president's desk as soon as possible, these particular bills, the multiple bills, not just one bill. So I want to thank you all, and I want to thank my ranking member as well. Yeah, she would like to say something as well. And then for those members that have stuck to the subject matter of the hearing today, I appreciate them as well. So I'll yield back my time, and then also the ranking member will have an opportunity. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank
the witnesses. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I also do want to acknowledge the people that are in the audience. If you are in the audience and you had some connection to a problem with abuse of children, can you stand? If you're in any way connected to your concern about this issue, I'd like to see you. Is there anybody here who actually has lost someone? And can you raise your hand? Yes, I see the one. Yeah. Thank you very much for being here, for taking on this challenge. I do want to say that, particularly to Commissioner Slaughter, that while all of these particular issues that we want to deal with, I think will be best served if it is in the context of what the Federal Trade Commission does, that we will be able to really get down to who are the people who, that are, hold on that 1 second, there's a phone ringing in my ear. My belief is that we need to make sure that we have the protection that we need. We can't take it for granted. And that's why it is very important that we actually pass the legislation that the FTC had done. So I am very, very grateful. I think we are, Mr. Chairman, unanimous in our concern of the urgency of addressing the needs of our children and protecting them. That is what this was about today. So thank you very much for all of your good work.
Okay, very, very good. I ask unanimous consent that the documents on the staff document list be submitted for the record. Without objection, so ordered. I remind members that they have 10 business days to submit questions for the record, and I ask the witnesses to respond to the questions promptly. Members should submit their questions by the close of business on April 9th. So without objection, again, thank you for being here. Without objection, the subcommittee is adjourned.